Good afternoon, everybody. Today is Tuesday, May 16th, and this is the work session of the Board of County Commissioners. And we're going to begin this afternoon with a special meeting of the Board of Social Services, which is our Board of County Commissioners wearing different hats. And what we've got here today is the first quarter update, and we have Lindsay and staff, and I hope you can introduce everybody, although I know who they are.
Thank you. Lindsay Mace, Director of Human Services, and we'll just go around and introduce ourselves.
Hello, I'm Matt McGaugh, our Deputy Director of Programs and Services.
Sam Lander-Casper, Deputy Director of Strategy and Operations.
Stuart Fox, Financial Analyst.
Great, welcome. Thanks for being here, and take it away.
Good to see you all.
Why are we here?
Thanks for having us here today. So as you said, the Board of County Commissioners today serves as the Board of Social Services, and we're going to be reviewing our first quarter expenditures and payrolls of 2023. We're also going to be providing maybe a little bit of a different way that we come to you each quarter. We like to change it up to keep it interesting for you all. So we'll see what you think. As you know, Colorado's state supervised county administered human services system. The Colorado Department of Human Services is responsible for many of our mandated services that are provided by local and district human services departments. And of course, along with that comes all of our allocations and expenditures for all of those services. So the state really relies on you all as our Board of Social Services to oversee our local social services and all of the activities that address economic assistance and welfare duties, responsibilities, and activities of the County Human Services Department. So we always like to just talk a little bit about the budget, because this update today will cover 2023's calendar year budget, and you'll be looking at the first quarter. The Human Services program allocations follow the state fiscal year of July to June, and because of this, the second half of the year sometimes looks a little bit different or a little bit wonky. It's really to cover what you might see in the second half is a spike in our revenue, which is to cover the previous state fiscal year expenditures. We have a process in Human Services where we close out or pay out for the state fiscal year, and so sometimes you'll see those in there as well, which can make it just look a little funny. It doesn't really ever necessarily mean that we're receiving more revenue than expenditures. It's just because of the difference of those two, the calendar year versus the state fiscal year. So the boss today, the Board of Social Services, is going to review first quarter, January through March, budget expenditure and payrolls. This is what we're mandated to bring to you and have you approve. So I will hand it over to Stuart.
Thank you.
Yep.
Good to see you guys all in person.
Yeah, welcome.
I'm going to keep this fairly brief because this first quarter is very simplistic. It's very simple. We are in line with a year over year compared to first quarter 2022. And I'm going to start by looking at the
Can you
bottom
press the
line.
little button on your monitor?
Oh my goodness.
Red light has to be on.
Red light, okay, there we go, technology. All right,
Red
so like,
light's on, green light's off.
okay, all right. Yeah.
Try again.
Yeah. Direct you guys' attention to the year-to-date actuals. You'll notice for our total fund that Human Services is only overspent by $8,000 for the first quarter. And that excludes any kind of offsetting county internal general fund transfer, which I think speaks volumes to our management of expenditures. Excuse me. There are some items I'd like to highlight, some discrepancies that we can outline, but as I mentioned, this first quarter feels in line with previous quarters, and so I don't feel that there's much that needs to really be delegated, but if you guys have questions, please stop and ask. One of those that you might notice is under childcare. You'll notice that expenditures is only 5% of what was budgeted. And the real reason, I'm going to sound a little bit like a broken record, the reason behind that is the same reason for last quarters as well, is there's been less case management compared to previous years. And so there's just less cases and therefore less expenditures, which, you know, that's pretty straightforward.
We just need that screen on.
No.
The screen on, sorry.
Sorry, but that's kind of where we focus. It's kinks in the neck, this. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
John, I see John's here, your hand's not up, but I want to give you, do you want to say anything, or are you good? You're just listening?
No, I'm good, actually. The sound wasn't working, but it is working now.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Perfect. There you guys can see that child care 5%.
So when we get to the 5%, so you're saying, and it was the same last quarter of last year as well. So what can we expect to see a lot then in the next 2 quarters? Is that what you're getting to? I'm just wondering.
No, I'm not trying to forecast. You know, that's difficult to forecast cases, right? That's child service cases, and I'm not qualified to try to forecast
Okay.
that.
Yeah, I would say that we are just experiencing low numbers there. We've talked about the concern around staff capacity at a lot of our child care centers. And so that's impacting the number of children that can be admitted to these programs. And then we just have an issue with people qualifying. And so a lot of people's income is at a point where they're not eligible for that program. And so we're not able to use our allocation if they're not eligible. And so we're seeking ways, working with Aspen Family Connections to try to get a good connections with the family they're working with, and try to help people become eligible or be aware of the program. So we're making some efforts there. I don't know, Sam, if there's anything else you.
Yeah, it's been, the child care assistance program's been hard to really follow since COVID started. We don't really know, and we've talked with our partners about the reasons for why we're just not seeing participation, whether, like Matt mentioned, it's just not a lot of spaces opening up, because we do pay full rates for all of the providers that we contract with. So there isn't an issue of a difference in pay rate with the program. But we're just not seeing either folks being able to get in. We're also seeing that a lot of folks who live in this area with children, most are making a little over at least that 265% of the federal poverty level and going with Kids First, which is where Kids First takes over. And we'd have no control over that income limit for the program. It's set by the state. So we're, kind of at a loss for how we can utilize this allocation more effectively.
So, go ahead,
Yeah,
Patty.
we've kind of talked, and I know we've talked about it with APCHA too, with the Housing Authority, looking at, we want people to be having more income because of things that are going on in the world. And people are, and we're encouraging that for employers to pay a higher wage, but then it's wiping people out for those benefits that they still need. So I know we were talking about looking at raising those limits, and is there any effort that we can maybe assist with at the state level or is it ongoing? Kelly might know because of.
Haven't heard any conversation about those.
Yeah, but maybe that's something we need to think about this year.
Sam is sitting on the CCAP, right? You're on the CCAP allocation committee right now. Do you want to speak just a little bit to some of the stuff that's happening in this next year? It doesn't really actually address a lot of this, but there is ongoing conversations. The Northwest is specifically, I think almost all of the counties in the Northwest are underspent in their CCAP dollars, which is interesting and telling. It's good data to know that the cost of living in these areas, everybody's getting, incomes are going up, which means that it's pushing people off of eligibility for some of these programs. It's not just here, it's happening in Summit, Eagle, kind of all of the big resort
It might be a
areas.
good group to rally. Something I could maybe bring up at Northwest COG too.
It's frustrating because we want to use those dollars. We want to be able to help these families, but they're just not meeting eligibility.
It's great. They're going to have a higher income, and then they're not going to be able, they're going to have to pay full child care.
Yep.
So it's taking their higher income and kind of.
Wash.
Yeah, it's even beyond a wash.
We do deny a lot of the applications due to that reason. So we're getting applications. It's just a lot
They
of
just don't
families aren't
fit.
eligible. So
Kelly, go ahead.
Yeah, I just have 2 questions. Can this pay for Friends and Family Network care?
So it can, we just don't have very many households so that would get certified through Garfield County. There is a screening process. However, we have not had anyone approach us about that. The rate of pay is so low that it would really, and they can only have 2 children from the same family. So you just don't see a lot of financial incentive. Now, if there were a relative that weren't working, were retired or whatever that wanted to do that, we could help get them connected. But I think we find that a lot of those folks are just doing it anyway.
Sure.
There's just not a lot of financial stimulus there.
And then is this one of the programs where other counties can buy our expenditure? So are we seeing them, is it getting bought up by the end of the year?
Not really. We haven't seen any requests for CCAP, which is telling also that we're
So
underspent.
even elsewhere in the state, or even Garfield, I would think would be a draw for this money. Okay, thank you.
So I just had a question, when this happens, if it happens for a long enough time, you kind of wonder if the funds are going to go away.
Right.
Right.
And have you thought or put any effort into, what happens if that, who knows if it turns around in 2 years and all of a sudden we want and need that money? It becomes demonstrable that we could use it and spend it. Is there a method or a process for doing that? I remember, if it's government allocation of funding, sometimes it's really hard to change the direction of the ship, and if you don't use it, you lose it, sort of thing. And I'm just wondering, what do we anticipate there, if anything? John might have been through this before.
Well, we were fortunate enough to sit on the CCAP allocation committee for this year to come up with the algorithm. At the end of the day, there weren't really much as far as changes goes. A lot of people were experiencing this same issue. So we're not really seeing any change to the allocation format right now. But there is that concern over time. If we keep seeing, underspending, that conversation will go towards, well, how do we best utilize this, or how do we reallocate it to the counties that need it? I think with everything that's been going on, there just hasn't been that big of a voice saying, well, we need all this extra money, because a lot of people are overspent. So hopefully next year we can continue to serve on those committees to be a voice for, smaller Northwest counties when they are considering how that allocation is, decided each year.
And didn't they say
Right.
this year that there's no floor in
Right.
right? So in the allocation committee this year, they decided that there's no floor, so it doesn't matter. Right, it's watchful waiting at this point to see and so that's influencing what happens in the allocation committee, to see how we proceed, because we're not alone in this, and a lot of counties are experiencing it. And unfortunately, when I first came onto the job, I thought, well, can we just take some of that CCAP money, and put it towards some of these, because we overspend a lot of our allocation. So could we are there ways that we can balance it out? And there's rules.
You can't.
And you can't do that. Yep. Also wishful thinking. But.
Well, I'm glad we've got a seat at the table, or have so far. So, okay, want to move on? Have we covered that?
Yeah, keep
Sure,
going.
perfect. The other item I wanted to bring to your attention was just adult protection. You'll notice that expenditures are only 10% for that first quarter, which is under what we would assume about 25%, since we're 25% of the year done. That, again, like I said, I'm going to be a broken record. That is due to just overall lower caseloads. One thing we did want to highlight in that was that Adult Protection Services will be receiving an additional $10,000 of Elder Justice Funds, EJF, in 2023, which is not included in our budget, but that's will be useful to offset some expenses, specifically for not COVID related. That was the first funding. This is going to be for.
It'll support more of our staff salary.
Yep.
It's kind of confusing when it looks like we're underspent. We do overspend the allocation, but we budget larger. And so right now, with that extra additional money, we'll be able to use that for salary.
Got it.
And so those were the two items I really wanted to highlight, and kind of open it up to you guys if you have additional questions.
Steve?
Well, I'm looking at the TANF numbers, how we're already over 134%. And I know we always bounce around a lot, and buy leftover dollars from other counties and all of this, but, how did we spend that much so quickly?
Yep.
Were we paying back arrears to other counties or what?
No, again, broken record. This was I guess this has been going on for a year. So we have a mismatch between budget and allocation or expenditures. And so the budget for the salary and benefits for TANF employees is actually found in the admin and economic assistance. So it's up there, part of that 2.45 million. Yet the expenditures for TANF are where they should be. And so we just have a mismatch of budget versus actuals. And so it drives that huge number. And that's been the same
It's our norm.
bullet point year after year. As we're entering the
Mismatch.
2024 budget process, that is something I have highlighted to see if we can address that. So it isn't something we have to continue to explain.
Always been mismatched when it came to that. So.
Right. Got it. Okay, let's keep moving.
So if there's no more, would you like me to make a motion? This is an action item, I do believe.
Yep.
Yes,
I would like to make a motion to approve the 2023 first quarter expenditures.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, motion by Patty, second by Steve. On further discussion, you're less than 1% from your estimate, right? That's what we were saying of the deficit in your actual, which is pretty amazing. Just wanted to say that's pretty good. I'd say, is it good forecasting or is it luck? I don't know, but I'll give it to you.
A little both.
A little of both.
Greg. Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you for presenting this. It's always fascinating. Okay, and moving on to, is it payrolls next?
That's right. Yep, so we'll move on to payrolls, and is this? Matt, are you doing this one? for
Oh, I
payrolls?
wasn't aware of that, no. Go ahead, Stan.
All right, great. Yeah, so sorry for the confusion. We've, as you all know, have had a bit of a restructure in human services, and for the past 6 years, I've been managing the economic assistance department and talking about this. So
So now you're still mismatched.
yeah, we're just catching Matt up on what all of these things mean and the trends that we're seeing. We already discussed childcare, the underspending there. Really, I think the only other thing here that we see where there's much of a variance that needs to be called to attention is under food assistance. So the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, you'll see that number is actually higher than last year. However, in March, they ended the emergency benefits that were going out to everybody receiving the SNAP during COVID. So I think in the second quarter, we're going to see a pretty significant decrease to those benefits that are being issued, with a particular impact to older adults, simply because the income, the way it's calculated for SNAP, for people who are on a fixed income, there is no allowance for that where they reduce the actual income. So that full amount of income factors into the equation and typically reduces those benefits. So a lot of our older adults with low income who are on the SNAP program receive that monthly minimum, which, Sandy, is it $30 now or $23 a month? So going from almost $300 a month that they were seeing for the majority of the pandemic down to $23 a month. So that's kind of the big thing that we would call out here. Everything else is pretty on par. The aid to the needy disabled is always a underutilized program simply because the income limit is incredibly low, as well as Colorado Works basic cash assistance. However, we are utilizing our Colorado Works TANF funds in other ways. Mostly we're looking at how we contract with other organizations in the community to help provide services to TANF eligible populations. So one of those contracts that we do and we're getting in place for this year again is with Aspen Youth Center, which helps them hire an additional position that opens up more spaces for their summer programs so that they can serve more folks. And we're just looking at other ways that we can contract with our partners in the community to get those services out to people that would benefit TANF families.
Greg, can I?
Yeah, please.
So what are we going to do about feeding people? I mean, people are still going to be hungry.
So
And we're reducing their benefits to a ridiculous, and that's serious.
Yeah, and groceries haven't gotten cheaper.
God, no, I mean,
They're just getting more expensive.
Yeah.
We've done a few things to address it. Matt, do you want to talk about some of the?
Sure. We used some leftover, I believe it was funding from COVID relief. And so we were able to set up a program for people that are going to lose some of these benefits to have access to some food cards and additional support so that they could go get some groceries. I believe we set up a program, $100 and $200 gift cards depending on the size of family. And so that's available monthly for people that are eligible in Pitkin County. And so we're going to continue to run that program until funds are expended. I think we're probably getting close, but we wanted to offset that a little bit. So we notified a lot of the people that we're going to lose those benefits, that we had this new program. And so in partnership with Aspen Family Connections and our Economic Services Department, we've been trying to get those out to people.
Kelly?
I have a question for John Peacock, if he is still on. This continues to live in the unanswered ether for me, but we were set to receive an additional $450,000 that went to, PILF counties?
Pilt?
Pilt, thank you. Counties, and I don't know if we ever allocated that towards specific programs that came in sort of after the fact and very separately from like the ARPA monies and the original round before the ARPA funds. So do we have that to expend? This seems like this might be worthy of discussion for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so Kelly, we have not appropriated that. I know we are going to be in front of you with some proposals for use of at least a chunk of that money, but not all of it. Lindsay, now I'm trying to remember the amount off the top that we're going to be looking at around the homeless services.
It's about 360,000 of that.
Mm-hmm. And so we would have enough to cover some of these expenses out of that allocation, which was just north of 800,000. And what it was a replacement for payment in lieu of taxes that came with the ARPA funds. So they have a little bit looser set of requirements on them.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's a great idea, Kelly.
It might be a good time too to just to talk a little bit about the Financial Empowerment Center. I know, Kelly, you've been involved a little bit. It's not in our memo, but it's addressing what we're talking about, which is self-sufficiency, right? And the ability for families to be able to be financially sufficient. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, Sam? Just kind of give a quick update on what that looks like, because I think that starts to address, because there's food, there's childcare, there's, right, all of these things that are impacted by the cost of living and what's happened for us locally. And we are looking to solutions with community partners to address kind of all of those. And this is one of the ways, but I'll let Sam, because he's been really involved in it.
Yeah, I'll try to keep it brief. So I think we've spoken about the Financial Empowerment Center. It's something we've been working on with both Eagle and Garfield counties. The purpose of which is to provide free professional financial counseling to anyone who lives in our counties. And when we say that, we're really focusing on 4 areas, right? This isn't financial advice for people who are looking to invest. It's more around securing banking, increasing savings, improving credit scores, and I'm blanking on the 4th one right now, but very entry-level banking, really to help people manage their finances, give them access to people who can help them with budgeting and things like that, to help start creating these nest eggs, whether it's to buy a house or just to have an emergency fund. And so this work's been going on for a couple years now. Nan really started it before she left, and we've done a lot of planning with a group called the Cities for Financial Empowerment Fund out of New York. They're a nonprofit. They initially did this model during the recession in 2009 and then have created this nonprofit that helps other areas establish these financial empowerment centers. Mostly these are in municipalities. We would be the first regional one, so it's kind of an experimental process. It's taken us a little longer. We've met with dozens and dozens of partners. We have about 70 different organizations, including private business, banks, nonprofit partners who are all invested in this idea, and we're currently in the fundraising area of this. We've got a plan for to implement, which would be having 3 of these counselors, 1 in each county, being remote and virtual as much as they can, but also being out in the community meeting with people, with a manager of those 3 positions, as well as basically a lead agency that would manage the people. So, and we've put together a budget. This is going to cost around $400,000 a year, and we're talking to a lot of different partners at this point, looking at how we can put those funds together. There's a lot of different options. It's an interesting partnership when we start looking at working with banks. They have an interest in this with their Community Reinvestment Act dollars, and our community foundations in the area. So it's been an interesting process, and we're hoping to have this up and running sometime before the end of summer, if we can do that.
Well, you've been really involved in it too, Kelly. I mean,
A little bit, yeah.
well, my biggest thing is feeding. Childcare and all these other issues, but people need to eat. And we need to make sure they're having healthy diets, because when they don't, then that just contributes to medical costs and diabetes, obesity, the names goes on and on and on, which is something we're also looking at locally and globally, not only nationally but globally. So I think Kelly's idea of looking at some appropriation of the remainder of our PILT funds is that money can be used that way. But, and we're coming upon a season where the local CSAs are really helping to provide those healthy foods between now and fall when they're harvesting crops. And that's a good way to support our local sustainable agriculture, the use of our open space, for ag leases, and to provide healthy diets. And I think that's, for all age groups, from the oldest to the youngest. I think that's a key thing, and I think that's something that we should really be focusing on.
So I would add that maybe we haven't spoken about this before, there is a regional coalition around food security, the
Right.
Mountain Coalition for Food and Nutrition Security, and we just worked to help Lift Up submit a grant for $500,000 in USDA funds that would purchase local, minimally processed foods that could be then distributed at all of the
That's where I'm
distributions.
heading. That's where I'd like to
Yeah,
see
so that group really focuses on looking for these funding opportunities and kind of bringing it in at a regional level. So there is work going on there.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I just was at the Economic Development District meeting with Northwest COG, and they had a discussion about issues with CSAs and local sustainable ag. And some counties are like, oh yeah, we're going to start. And I'm like, we're already there. They've been there. So the Colorado Sun, I spoke with her yesterday, is looking at doing an article about what we're doing with our local sustainable farmers, our open space, and our providing food. So that might be a great opportunity for us to get the word out there. So I'm forwarding her on to the young powers that be out there that are hardworking farmers and who are really behind this effort. So I think that'll be a great opportunity for us to get the word out. Thanks.
It'd be great to get them connected with.
Yeah, that's
this
what I'm thinking.
program,
I'm adding you
Lift Up-
guys to the
Lift Up
list.
as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did want to ask regarding partnerships with groups like Lift Up and other food providers. Are we able to track who's losing assistance, and are they in the program with Lift Up? Do they go and pick up food packages? Are they part of that? Do we have any idea how many there are and who they are, and if they're actually partaking from the farm to food pantry, for instance, or other things like that? It'd be nice to know. Maybe that's making a difference.
So we could provide statistics on how many households would decrease. That individual level data we aren't allowed to share. Like we couldn't go to Lift Up and say, hey, have you spoken to these people? We just aren't allowed to use that information. So there isn't really a good way of knowing of the folks who experienced a decrease in their SNAP benefits, how many ended up going to Lift Up. I think the biggest thing is getting the word out. So helping support Lift Up in that outreach, letting people know when Lift Up's got their pantry open in our building, And, you know, right now Lift Up's in an information gathering phase with that pantry, asking people when would be the best time, because they're looking at expanding those hours. They just want to make sure that they're approaching it with a tactical approach, not just guessing at what works for folks. So
Right.
our biggest role that we can help them with is getting the word out about when and where these, and the type of food that's there. I think people think that it's, you know, not a good level of food. Lift Up purchases a lot of food. They buy vegetables, you know, they get it from Food Bank of the Rockies. They're buying fresh local food as well. So the quality of food's substantially higher than what I think people might think they'd find there.
It's great.
Great. It's good. Yeah, and hopefully the people who are losing on SNAP are aware of that and are able to get it. And if that's what you can do, then that's.
There's
way to
been
go.
some legislation changes that we're gonna talk about also after we're done with payrolls that will start to explain some of what's happening with admin costs and SNAP benefits. So there are things happening everywhere around this. We're really lucky to have selected Lift Up to be a vendor in the Human Services building, the Health and Human Services building. That is certainly the handoff between our Economic Assistance Department, SNAP benefits, if we see that somebody has lost their max allotment and is now getting a much lower amount, we're able to walk them right up to Lift Up.
I know it's right there.
And it's right there now, so we have that kind of direct connection, and if they're not open, they're working with us to give us 72-hour bags or kind of shelf stable, that's what it's called, shelf stable foods that we can hand to people so that they have at least something between now and when they come back to go to Lift Up to get some of that food. I have gone up there a few times. If you have not yet gone to Lift Up and seen the operation, it's pretty amazing. They have a line out the door every day that they're open, and the quality of food is really good. They have like organic food in there. They have good produce, really good meat in there. I
I'll have to
think
come by. I haven't been, have you been by to
you'll
see
have to
it?
check
I
it
haven't,
out.
I haven't been to this
Yeah.
location. Is Amy there a lot? Amy Thrum?
Amy Thrum, yep,
Yeah.
yep, she's
Okay.
one of the volunteers. Yeah,
Right,
we have
right.
some really great volunteers. It's just, I think it's been successful enough that they're looking at expansion of hours, being able to serve the community even better. So I think the partnership with us and also some of the other entities in the building who are working with people in that public serving kind of way is just, it's a huge win for us, and it's allowing some of this more collaborative, some of the CSA stuff. We have a CSA program that we're going to be working with Two Roots on to be implementing outside of Lift Up. So now that the pantry's there, it's kind of like we can draw people in through the CSA veggies, and then say, and if you need
Pasta.
if you need more, right? What are you
To
gonna
go
do
with
with
your
that kale? So it's just been a really nice partnership, and something that came at the right time when our public health emergency ended and SNAP max allotments went down. So we're just feeling grateful for that partnership.
Great. Thank you. Any other things you want to pull out on the payrolls? I wanted to ask about LEAP. Whenever I think of low-income energy assistance, I think about an opportunity to do energy efficiency measures with CORE or something like that, but I don't know if there's a connection there. But
Yeah, we do refer folks to CORE when they apply for LEAP or when they meet with economic assistance staff, you know, as applicable. Yeah, LEAP was a little higher this year, which is good to see. We've kind of been noticing that, especially since they started paying for water costs, which is great. Also, they made an exception to allow folks who are renting to get some payment there too, so that's helpful to offset those rent costs when the utilities are wrapped up in it. Obviously, we'd like to see it go bigger, you know, so this year we're really looking at how do we outreach starting in November to draw more folks in, especially early season. We tend to see it kind of kick in towards the end once people have already fallen behind. But if you're going to qualify, you don't have to be behind to qualify. So hopefully we can really do a good job with outreach this year, maybe have some events to bring people in. And
yeah, definitely, if there's an opportunity to get CORE at the table, just to be there to provide an option or some information, that might be useful.
Yeah.
I just need a motion if we're ready to approve this, or we could go down the list.
I'll make a motion to approve the 2023 first quarter payrolls. We're
I'll
going to pay
second.
you guys, by the way, for the
and
first
second.
quarter.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, thank you.
Great. So today, unfortunately, Greg Wolf could not be here. We were going to introduce our new mental health programs analyst. I'll make sure to get him over. Look, there's a picture of him.
But we got him busy already, right?
Yeah. I'll make sure to get him over here at some point so he can meet you all. This has been really exciting, and he has been now with us for, I want to say, 2.5 months. And he has really been instrumental in starting to bring together our mental health partners and working in partnership with public health on the mental health access program project. He has been running weekly case conferencing meetings, pulling all of the partners together and really starting to look at this with a very interesting lens. He was a nurse before
I
coming
know his
here.
his background is all over the place. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. So what was really interesting, the way that he kind of brought in the lens of assessment and understanding what's happening in the environment first before making decisions to really inform kind of how he does the work was what really, I think, we were all really excited about that history and had never really thought of it in human services to bring a nurse in, but to have that experience was something that we felt like would be really valuable for the complexity of what's happening with mental health in our county. So there he is. That's Greg Wolf. If you see him, introduce yourself. And we will make sure to get him in front of you at some point.
Questions, comments? I was just wondering, how does his position coordinate with our local mental health care agencies and, NGOs, I guess?
Yeah.
We're working with. How does that?
He's really the convener. So he's bringing them all together every week right now, once a week. And what happens in this space, so it's in a couple of different ways. So he's doing what we call case conferencing. So you bring together all of the partners that we are contracting with and then some, any others who are maybe interfacing with the system some way. So like law enforcement, the jail will be sitting in that space. I'm trying to think who else is not one of our contracted partners, anyways.
The usual suspects.
Right.
And
That
the
are really,
unusual one.
really, are really helping to manage individuals in our community who are touching the system in multiple areas. So he's bringing all of those partners together every week. And in that space, we're starting to actually do some mock referrals and discussing when a client comes in. I'll give you an example. So if I'm a client that goes to Mind Springs Health today and they do an assessment on me and find that I need therapy, case management, I need a peer counselor, I need psychiatry, and also one of the social determinants that's getting in the way is transportation of me being able to be at my appointments. If Mind Springs is unable to provide all of those services all at once, then they will be making a referral to say, we can get them in the next 2 weeks, or get this person in the next 2 weeks for these appointments, for therapy and case management, but we can't do peer and psychiatry for 6 to 8 weeks or something like that. So all of the providers will be in one space where we'll be discussing this client and say, okay, who in the room can see this client for psychiatry? Who in the room can see this client for
Who can get him a car,
peer? So
drive
we
him
can-
there?
and who can get him a bus ticket, right? Or a car, right? Or a way to get there. So the intention is to really start to reduce barriers so that people can get into the care that they need, the right fit care that they need. While also, we're going to be gathering some pretty good data. That's the hope, at least, and starting to really understand the landscape of what's happening with mental health in our area. So he is the one that's convening and bringing all those partners together, facilitating those meetings. And then any information that comes through that, like let's say that we start to see trends in, I'll use psychiatry because it's one that we hear often, that people are having a hard time accessing psychiatric services. If we start to see that trend, then that's going to funnel up to the steering committee, which is all the executive directors of all of those organizations, who will then say, okay, what do we do? And is this truly a gap, or do one of our organizations actually offer it and we just didn't know, or what happens? And then if it's truly a gap, that is then funneled up to the steering committee, or I'm sorry, the funders committee, who those are our partners who are helping to invest in this process. So
Great.
Great.
Yeah.
Nice answer. He's a producer.
he's a
really.
producer and a facilitator and a convener.
Hopefully
Yeah.
that skill set comes in addition to the nursing background.
Yeah, he also runs bikes, skateboards, snowboards, hockey, roller hockey, and camping, and fishing, and hunting. I'm like, yeah.
Doesn't mention skydiving.
I think that's the et cetera, dot, dot, dot.
The dot, 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 dot.
I'm
Yeah.
looking at our calendar and I see you've got a lot here. I don't want to, we've got about 20 minutes left, so I want to
We got a lot of
give you
bills.
20 minutes to crank through this.
Yeah.
So take it away.
All right, so I'll do a quick update on administration. Senate Bill 23210, this is the update of administration of certain human services. This is going to address some of those SNAP allotment things that we saw. So there was this passed. The Joint Budget Committee, the JBC, voted unanimously in favor of funding this. This was really indicated by so many of the counties being what we would term as underfunded for administration. You'll always see in our administration that we're way overspent. And that's because of our salaries, the cost of living, and just based on the allocation that we get. So the JBC approved an increase of 16.67 million total funds. Approximately 5 million general fund, 8.34 million federal funds, and 3.3 million on county match. We're starting to see that this actually isn't going to impact some of the smaller rural counties as much as we would have hoped. But where we do see this impacting is the needed funding for those SNAP allotments. It's addressing some of that the significant SNAP caseload increases over these last few years, and then in the coming months to support the SNAP max allotment changes. So those admin costs are going to hopefully help to level set in some of those areas. That's a really big one that we have advocated for very hard through legislative season, so we're really happy to see that one pass.
Great. Moving along, adult and family services.
Yeah, I have a couple updates here on a few bills. The first one here is House Bill 23-1249. This one is all about trying to reduce justice involvement for young people. So the law has changed, and this has passed both in the House and Senate, where there won't be criminal charges for children ages 10 to 12. And so that's a new thing in Colorado. There's 8 other states that have implemented a raise the floor bill, as they say. This is one that the counties were opposed to. And so there are some concerns with the passing of this bill. And I think the idea of trying to reduce the involvement of juvenile justice for 10 to 12-year-olds is good by trying to increase more community services. And so that's the idea behind this. I think that there's some concern because those that do have criminal charges in that age group are supposed to be served by our collaborative management program. And that's a program that we run in partnership with Aspen Family Connections. And so I think there's some concerns around the capacity to be able to provide some of the services that may be needed for some of these youth. There could be felony sex offenses and things like that we may not have the capacity to provide those services locally. So it's something we need to work more closely with the state on trying to get access for that. So I think that there's some concerns there. The program has also been voluntary in the past. Collaborative management is a collaboration of family and youth serving agencies. And typically we are engaging with families and giving them the option to have access to services. And this bill will then mandate that for some of those youth that are, that would have normally had criminal charges. So we'll be in the process of collaborating with Aspen Family Connections and Youth Zone primarily to best understand how we can serve these children. This will go into effect July 1st, 24. So we do have a year to kind of plan and prepare with local partners and with the state on how to address these.
Great, thank you.
Is there any questions about that one?
No, I just think we need to be kept in the loop to see where where we might, because if we do get overwhelmed and we can't provide those services as need be, then we're failing everybody.
And it, another concern that you just made me think of is it's really going to increase our child welfare numbers. And we really try not to have families involved with that system unless there's absolutely a need to look at child safety and neglect. And so that's another area that we're a little concerned about.
Yeah.
Kelly?
I would just comment that some of the concerns that I heard in the course of the lobbying efforts on this was, when there's like assault or violence in the home, that like in-home designed care isn't always appropriate for that family, because there is a victim and a perpetrator living in the same house, and so there was concerns about that the criminal response system really should still be part of this in some cases of real concern, and that there wasn't enough resources that the legislature had dedicated to making this system successful by really throwing resource at it to figure out how would you deal with more of these stickier issues, how would you provide more services to the 10 to 12-year-olds who are now just going to be funneled to child welfare.
And we're also, can I tag on to that, Greg? We're also seeing, not locally, but around the country, weapons issues with kids in that age group, homicides.
Yep.
And that's a whole different level. And I know sometimes they say, well, if homicide is involved, they bump you up into the criminal system. And so, because that's also a tough one. Was it an accident, gun lying around, or was it, that's a big question mark that seems to be growing. So, sadly.
Okay. I want to keep us moving, sorry.
Yeah, thank you. I'll move on to the next one here. This is Senate Bill 21277. This was a workload study that was done for child welfare. And so basically this was done, and the workload study initially found that the state was in need of approximately 285 new child welfare workers. And so this is based on the caseloads, and obviously across the counties it's different. And for Pitkin County, there was a recommendation for an added FTE. And so right now the state is going to dig into this a little bit more and work with the counties to determine any increase in funding for these allocations to help support that. And so that may be something that we would bring back to you depending on the need for us to look at hiring another full-time worker for our adult and family services division.
Right. And that recommendation's coming from the state, from there.
Yeah.
So we want to vet that locally, I assume, with your recommendations, right?
Yeah, because we also are very prevention heavy, and so they're going to do a separate study now on prevention workloads, and so we anticipate that may also impact us, since we do prioritize serving families that are outside of the child welfare system to try to get them access to services. And so there's more to come on this. Just want to give you that heads up that we may have to look at it. Hopefully it would be supported by a state allocation.
Right, got it.
Because I have the FTE circled and highlighted.
I knew you would.
You know me.
Yeah, of course.
We would see that in our allocation. That's part of the recommendation.
And I'm like, FTE.
We want to be careful with how we look at that too, and there could be more supportive ways to consider another FTE to
you.
support the division.
Right. Thanks for being creative on that. Next one.
All right, I'll take this one. We just wanted to touch a little bit on the debt ceiling bill that you probably saw pass through the House at the federal level, and just even though it's not likely to pass, I think this is something just to have in the back of our minds as our country is having some significant issues with deficit and debt, areas where money can be saved when you're looking at the budget are programs like SNAP, TANF, and Medicaid. And in this bill, the way they approach that is by really tightening down work requirements across the spectrum of these programs, meaning more people would be required to participate in these work programs in order to be eligible for these programs. For instance, SNAP would increase that work requirement for able-bodied adults without dependents The age from 18 to 50 now will be from 18 to 55. So more people would fall into that category where you can get 3 months of benefits, and if you're not participating in a qualified work activity, you would no longer be eligible, which in theory is not the worst idea, except that we find that generally these increases or these restrictions don't come with increased funding to help connect people with with employment opportunities, right? There's not job training that comes along with this or any additional funding to help connect people with work. So it really typically ends up just being a limiting factor for eligibility. We would see that in the TANF program if this went through as well, limiting the type of work participation that people can have. So meaning you might see them pulling back on allowing education as an allowable activity for things like that. And then establishing work requirements for Medicaid would make a huge impact. It would require individuals between 19 and 55 to work in some eligible activity, which, if you're not eligible, if you lose your job, Medicaid is something you really could use and while you're looking for work. So we don't see this happening. We don't see this bill going through, but I think we're going to see more actions like this or suggestions like this as we move into the future with how tight things are eventually going to get. And we did just want to bring it up in case for some reason it did go through. Even though it wouldn't impact our SNAP and TANF horribly, the Medicaid impact would be pretty heavy here in Pitkin County if that did come into effect. Also, the increased workload on the Economic Assistance Department. Monitoring people's work activities is a huge, huge amount of time. We've been lucky to be exempted from that for the SNAP program for the majority of the time I've been here. But if that came into effect with Medicaid, where we have, easily 1,200 people who would fall into that area, that would put a substantial amount of stress on the work capacity of the Economic Assistance Department.
And people who are disabled and on Medicaid don't have to qualify for work.
Typically, there are
They're
exemptions
exempted.
for folks who are disabled or over a certain age, yes.
Okay.
Got it, okay. Where to now?
The house debt ceiling.
Chad, come up and do this one.
Yeah, they're throwing it all out there.
All right. I will be brief. I'm Chad Federowitz. I'm the manager of senior services. I got red light. Okay. Just really, I'm going to go in reverse order with Senate Bill 298, Community First Choice. This is a bill that was passed and signed by the governor yesterday, actually, to allow the Department of Healthcare, Policy, and Finance to seek an amendment to the Medicaid program in the state, basically to allow options as far as the type of care and where care comes from. That's the short version. The other bill that may be a little more, I don't know what the right word is, but is Senate Bill 064, the Continued Office of Public Guardianship. So a few years ago, the state created a pilot for Office of Public Guardianship in 3 different judicial districts to assist local jurisdictions dealing with and working through the very complicated process of guardianship, which is taking away someone's legal rights to self-determination. So it's a pretty big deal, a very big deal here in Colorado as far as the complication aspects to do that. We tend to see more of these cases around older adults, hence that's why I'm talking. And so this bill kept that office alive and also expanded it throughout the state. By 2030, there will be Office of Guardianship in all the judicial districts within the state of Colorado, tied to FTEs slowly increasing to just under 30 FTEs by the end of fiscal year 27 throughout the state. So how that and why that's important. Guardianship is a very complicated policy, as I referred to. Generally, you see more cases of guardianship in very large metro areas, and you have staff expertise that can handle those cases. In small and rural counties, you may see one case of guardianship in your entire career, and it will dominate most of your time for that one staff person. In our case, we have a 0.75 adult caseworker. If we would happen to get a case of guardianship, it would almost immediately overwhelm our 0.75 caseworker, assuming it's an older adult. And so I think over time, this will be a huge benefit of a gap within the system of care, particularly for those who, by no fault of their own necessarily, can't really take care of themselves and can't advocate on their own behalf. So it's a very kind of touchy subject, the case of guardianship, of someone else is in charge of all my rights and my decisions. But this had a lot of support and did get passed and signed. So that's why I wanted to bring it up.
Can I just ask real
Thank
quick,
you.
how does
Sure, go ahead.
that differentiate from powers of attorney?
Power of attorney is in a way of, if I'm incapacitated, I will tell Lindsay what I want to happen, and I have it written down.
Whereas guardianship, you're too far past
Guardianship
that.
is I am no longer able to tell Lindsay what I want, so Lindsay has to figure it out, and she is legally
So
obligated.
it's more
to do
power
that.
than
Yes.
under guardianship.
It's regardless of what I say, Lindsay has to, by law, make decisions for me.
No, Chad, you're in trouble.
I know.
Thank
That's
you.
Be nice to Lindsay, starting now.
She's sitting right next to you there, too.
Those are just the ones I wanted to call out.
Great,
Thank
thank you. All right, we've got about 5 minutes left, but it looks like there's more. So what else do you want to do?
5 minutes.
Well, this can be short or long, depending. We're basically just wanted to come to the Board of Social Services and ask, over the last 7 years, we've had 3 different formats that we bring our memos to you as. One, we went by departmental or divisional updates, so admin, economic assistance, adult family services, senior services. Recently, we've been looking more at our strategic plan buckets, so updating you on safety, food security, housing stability, capacity building, and financial empowerment. This memo, we just, since it was legislative season, decided to go with really more of a legislative update, and we thought that another potential format could be strategic quarterly updates, meaning we do legislative updates in May, programmatic updates in August, strategic plan and coalition updates in November, and annual statistics, year-end statistics and program outcomes in February for a quarter 4. Or we could do something else, but we did want to ask how you all would like to get this information, what makes the most sense, or if there's any suggestions.
Great, thank you. No, I
We should
enjoyed
try it.
reading that.
I think we should try it and see how it works.
I think it sounds good, but comments? Are we going to be missing anything in any particular quarter? Or are we going to wish we had an update or maybe an introduction on reminding us of our strategic plan every time, for instance, before the things? Just trying to figure out how does it all fit so we stay on course.
So we have incorporated kind of a strategic plan overview in the general introduction. And the other thing that we would have to keep you updated on are grants and things like that. So there would be more to it than just the quarterly information, but we thought that was maybe a better order as far as when they're happening. We're bringing all of that to you at the same time to just be a little more organized.
Right, and do you need us to vote on this? Do we need a motion or anything, or just kind of thumbs up if you want
Just
to
a
try
thumbs
it?
up, whatever. Yeah, we're happy to do whatever works best.
We'll let you know if it's not working.
I'll give it a
There we
thumbs
go.
up. Yeah, I think that sounds great.
All right, so strategic quarterly updates, number 3 works for everyone?
Yeah.
Great.
That would work. And I had noticed that you were following in different formats, different presentations, and sort of was wondering what was going on.
I like the legislative
But
update.
I like it where, I mean, the
Very helpful.
basic information, you can just put that in the memo that we can read. But having a more in-depth discussion about specific things, I think is useful.
So it might help us with the whys and the redundancy questions. Great, thank you.
I wish
Great.
we could come to you a month earlier with legislative stuff. Right, our quarterly kind of where now legislative session is closed, and I think in the heat of it, there's definitely some If there's some way.
Turn your, make sure you get away.
If there's some way for us to be communicating with you all about what's happening with legislation, instead of waiting until the legislative session closes, but there's.
If you could send memos. We can
Yeah,
get
or
memos.
get a work session time if there's something really,
If there's something really
Yeah,
pressing,
yeah.
yeah, which we can do.
especially since
Yep.
we've got 3 people that are coming and going from Denver during the legislative session.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this time of year, when the legislation's been passed and signed, there's always a long list of things that affect the county that were decided in the state legislature that kind of change the ballgame in major ways sometimes, so that's good to actually have an update on those things too.
After it's closed.
After they're already passed.
Okay, Kelly, you get the
Yeah.
last
Oh,
word.
thanks. Well, I'm the CCI Health and Human Services rep, as you know, so I'm happy for us to like coordinate more directly. And then usually I bring back bills that we need to convert, where the positions wouldn't be obvious for Pickens County and we need to deliberate them, that you can attend or I can do after you and I talk as well.
Perfect.
Okay, I think if that's it, if you're all, anything else, otherwise we will close out.
You need a
this-
motion to
Oh,
adjourn
we
as
need
the
a
Board of
motion.
Associates. That's
Yes.
boss. I love
That's
that
the
one.
motion. That's the motion I was gonna ask for. Did you just make it?
I'll second.
There's a second from Kelly. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks,
Thank
thanks.
you.
Thank you.
Nice to
Thanks for
see you all.
coming. Great to see you all here.
Nice to see you again. I'm still jealous about Wrigley Field, but well, I'll get over it.
Okay.
I
so
know,
where
I'm
are
so
we?
glad.
2
I was so
o'clock.
glad to hear that.
Is Ashley coming up now?
Yeah, it's like the Dodger Rocky game when the Dodgers beat the Rockies 13-0. I'm like, well, I guess I'm a Dodgers fan tonight. Hi, Francie. Hi, team. Are you doing okay?
Yeah, we're doing okay, thanks.
Okay.
Much better today.
All right, let us know.
He's got a sense of humor today, which is great, and he walked a few steps. So
That's good.
things are better.
All right,
All
glad to
right,
hear
we're
that.
thinking about you.
Okay, up next, we have got, where are we? You're doing chairs. We're going to talk about child care support programs. And Ashley's here. With
Hi, Valerie.
Valerie. Hi, Valerie. Yes.
Thank you.
I knew I recognized you.
Again.
Just popping in. Give me 1 second
Your
just to
name
share
has
my
been
screen.
coming up a lot lately, or at least your organization
Oh,
has.
okay, I was gonna say, what, me?
Shh, don't tell her.
Okay. Wait for it. View slideshow. Okay. Hi,
Hi.
I'm Ashley Pearl. I'm the Community Resiliency Manager, and I'm joined by Valerie Garland from the Aspen Community Foundation. We are here for a quick 30 minutes to follow up on a proposal that we presented to you about 2 weeks ago around how we can better support childcares in the community. Before I start, I want to say happy month of the young child. Today was the parade where all the different childcare centers from across the county joined in downtown Aspen, and they all walked 3 blocks in a parade. And here's a photo from
And my
it.
kid is in the red hat group just in the back.
There you go. I knew somebody would know somebody. So just, it seems appropriate that we're talking about how we can support childcare. It was good to see these little ones visible in the community because I think we all know magically they somehow go somewhere during the day so the rest of us can work. And that they're well taken care of and cared for. And, that's a delicate system that doesn't always function perfectly. And so it's really nice to be able to have this time with the board to think through.
Kelly, you
What
do
we
know
can
that
do
your kids are sitting on the fountain. I'm glad it's not on
Well, I think the whole ELC is in the
in that corner. I'm like,
Anyway,
Yeah.
we won't
I don't think
report
it's
back
on.
on how the children were behaving, but
Turn the fountain on, quick.
I know, town was pretty quiet when I walked through, and I'm like, wait, it's really quiet downtown. So they were all over there.
there you go. So our agenda today is just to remind you what we're talking about. We do have a proposal that is a program description that we'd love your feedback on, and then we're going to do discussion. So as a reminder, I know you all hear this from me all the time, but just to ground ourselves in what we're doing here,
The county has just under $3.5 million of American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA funding. We have to obligate it by the end of next year, and we have to use it all by the end of 2026. Unfortunately, some of the more recent federal government legislation has had a couple provisions that would take back any unspent funds from governments that haven't used it yet. I haven't seen any of that move forward, but it has made me more aware that we should probably spend this money, aside from the fact that it is emergency funds that we're responsible for passing through to our community for the things that they need most, that they were impacted by COVID on, but just because we'd hate to lose this money because we didn't spend it. So we have obligated around 1.5 million of it to date for the teacher stipend program that we heard from. You heard an update from Valerie and I a couple weeks ago. It's going great. We're really happy to be moving it forward, and just tremendous amount of feedback and gratitude from teachers. So we have about 1.8 million remaining that we still need to obligate and then spend in that timeline. So I did a bunch of work when I first joined the county about a year ago to try to assess what are the challenges in the landscape, in the childcare landscape, and then where can we as the county really best use our money. These are the things you've heard from me before on this, on what are the biggest challenges that they're seeing. This came directly from interviews with staff and directors of childcare programs. So we heard they're leaving the profession for other lines of work. Once somebody leaves, you can't attract and hire new staff. Housing continues to be a really big challenge. We also heard on the family side, families are struggling to pay the cost of care because one, it's just expensive, and programs are continually needing to increase that incremental cost to pay their teachers more and to pay for increasing costs on their side. There's aging infrastructure, aging buildings that are just requiring ongoing maintenance and upkeep, and the directors are having to choose, where do you spend your money, on your staff or on your building? And then of course we've all heard that there are way too few spaces to meet the community need. So we've heard about this before. With this in mind, we also have our ARPA money, and we can't spend our ARPA money on just anything that we want, right? So it has to be used in alignment with the ARPA guidelines, which means something that we can show a direct impact on somebody or something from COVID. Excuse me, we have to be able to impact one or more of the challenges that we as a county want to address. Ideally, we're in alignment with partners and other organizations, so we're not duplicating and we're not kind of going a totally different direction from the way that the community is going. We've talked a lot about making sure it's an appropriate use of one-time funds so that we're not starting something that then we can't continue funding and it has this big cliff effect. And then ideally that it has a low administrative burden so that we don't need a whole new full-time staff member just to run a program, for example. So with all this in mind, these are the responses we've had so far. So the challenge to staff leaving the profession, the county implemented the staff support stipend with the help of Baskin Community Foundation. The inability to attract and hire teachers, I do believe that the staff support stipend helps with that a bit, plus other local programs that Kids First and others are running where it's like a new hire bonus and things like that. Housing continues to obviously be a large issue, both in the childcare sector as well as across the community. So continuing to focus on community housing solutions, which we do all the time as a county. The families that are struggling to pay the cost of care, you just heard from the really good folks up at Human Services. They run the CCAP program, which stands for the Colorado Child Care Assistance Program, I believe. So families that are lower income can get help paying for child care. We are looking at how the TANF funds, Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, could support more after-school care and summer care for children. And there's other regional programs up and down the valley that help families with tuition assistance. And then we come to the last two. So for the aging infrastructure and just kind of upkeep of buildings is the proposed maintenance and equipment grant that we'll chat about today. And then for the too few spaces to meet the community need, we can certainly have future conversations around using the remaining ARPA funds or a portion of those funds to support larger capital projects that would add new spaces to the community. So that's where we've had the conversation about Stotts Mill, Little Red Schoolhouse, the Burlingame Center, other big programs like that. That'll be a future meeting when I have firmer numbers. So today we're just going to focus on the maintenance and equipment grants, but I wanted you all to see the big picture because I know you want to use this money where the impact is needed. And there's enough of it that we can use it in a couple different areas to try and address a couple of the different problems across the system, which is inherently really challenging, right? The system is broken, the system needs to be changed. And no matter what we do, we are trying to put a Band-Aid on it right now, right? And that's what one-time money is limited for. But I think it has spurred ongoing sustainable conversations at this table around how we might be involved in the long term and really have that systems level change. So with that today, we wanted to chat about the maintenance and equipment program. We previewed this to the board about 2 weeks ago. So the challenge we're trying to address with this is that childcare centers, childcare directors have to choose between either funding staff wages and benefits versus funding other needs in their program. There's never enough money to fund everything. And right now, staff are what make the whole system tick, right? It's the essence of what makes childcare work. And so many programs have chosen to put money towards staff, which means we have a number of deferred maintenance, a number of like building infrastructure things that have fallen by the wayside just by the sheer need of needing to choose. So some of those needs are deferred maintenance or purchase of replacement equipment, things like this. Aside from just, it would be nice to have new carpet. We also understand that the lack of these sorts of things, so if you don't have the proper equipment, if you don't have a quality space to work in, the staff who are putting all this money in and we really want to stay, their job performance, their quality of life, their job satisfaction is impacted. So it ties right back to we're giving $1.5 million towards a staff stipend program so people will stay in their jobs and hopefully come and join this profession. The space and the conditions they're working in every day and the resources they have to do their job well really matter as well, in addition to how much they're getting paid. So that's why this is the second tier program that I'm recommending as staff to really support our childcare systems and help make sure we have the staff to make this work. So I did run this past kind of our ARPA considerations. So the funds can be put to use immediately. We could get them out as soon as the summer. We can impact a challenge that teachers and directors identified, which is keeping staff, bringing in staff, and needing to do some deferred maintenance and purchase equipment. It's an appropriate use of one-time funds, right? We give it this time, the project is closed and completed. They're not coming back to us 2 years from now saying, oh, I need that to keep on going. And we can design a program with Aspen Community Foundation's help that requires relatively low administration on the county's part. The proposed total program cost is just over $200,000, which would leave our total ARPA money to still play with at around $1.6 million. So still a lot of conversations to be had about where we want to put the rest of that money over the coming year. With that, we have Aspen Community Foundation, which has been a tremendous administrative partner in rolling out our staff stipend program, because yours truly can't do all of that. And so naturally we turn to Valerie again to say, would you be willing to administer this program? So Valerie and her team, who run grants all the time, put together a little program plan that was attached to your memo today. And I'm just going to have Valerie kind of walk us through what a Aspen Community Foundation would recommend as kind of a administration of the program, which will hopefully answer some of the questions you all brought up at our last meeting.
Great, thanks. Welcome, Valerie.
Yeah, thank you. Am I on?
Yeah.
That was a wonderful introduction. It's always nice to remind ourselves why we're here. So we are looking at this program to be in alignment with the staff teacher stipend program, and so we'd open it up to all the licensed child care providers that are already participating in that stipend program. We have a relationship with them. We've done some preliminary conversations with them about this type of support, so it's going to be a pretty easy lift. We're thinking that usage of the funds could be furnishings, equipment, interior upgrades, structural upgrades, playground, deferred maintenance, so on and so forth, as identified through site visits. So we really want to lean into what the providers are telling us their needs are and how those needs are going to enhance their ability to recruit and retrain staff, to increase their quality, and hopefully, in some cases, maybe increase their capacity if possible. So the process that we are proposing is really about 5 steps. So this pre-application process, meaning that staff from both Pickens County and ACF would meet with each provider, really sit down with them and go through what their challenges are with their facilities and with their staffing, and then work to develop an appropriate ask for this program. So they're not going to go in blind. We're not going to accept a blind application. We really want to have a conversation with them. And then, of course, we do have an application that we would have them complete. That's sort of a best practice. A very simple handful of questions describing what their project is, how much they need, what this is going to do for them as far as enhancements to their program. And then those applications will be reviewed and approved, meaning that we'll look at them to see if they fit our guidelines, if they make sense, and then if they fit with the amount of money we have to allocate, and we'll determine some grant amounts there. Once those grant amounts are approved, then it's a check writing process to each of these programs, along with some grant agreements that actually outline very specifically how the funds should be used, so there's no questions, there's no gray area. And then finally, once the projects are complete, we will ask for those reports back from the providers. So we have that in writing to then turn back to you to say, here's what was accomplished. We'll also try to get some photos so we can maybe see some cool things that were done. But just making sure that we have sort of touched all the bases and have that accountability piece in there throughout the process. We are thinking that this needs to be a multiple application opportunity. We've heard from providers again that doing kind of a one and done, meaning like right now, is not necessarily going to help them. They need some time to think through what their needs are, to talk to contractors if it's a structural upgrade, to sort of get their ducks in a row before they can make a really solid ask. And so we want to give them opportunities to do that throughout the next almost 18 months-ish. So we're proposing up to 4 rounds if needed. And the process for each round would look the same as I just went through. We'll meet with them beforehand, get their application needs lined out, application, approval, review and approval, checks out, reporting. We'll do this kind of circularly for up to 4 cycles. And what's that? Was that my last one? And then hopefully, and we think by that time, we'll have all those funds expended. So the $220,000 is what we're anticipating for actual program costs, and then the $4,400 are the admin fee that we're anticipating based on that.
Great.
So
questions? I've got some, but
I don't have a problem with this. I mean, having toured so many of the sites when we did the first stipends, which was so cool, seeing some things that were pretty obvious. And one child care center, for example, I know it sounds so simple, but the carpet and the walls, I mean, would just brighten up. And kids, you spend a lot of time on the floor when you got kids. And I think it would just enhance the morale of the families, the children, the atmosphere of the health in some cases. And I think having Aspen Community Foundation helping us out again is a blessing on our part. Thank you. And I at this time don't see any reason why we would not want to support this and do just a little more for our child care providers and for where our children go for care.
Okay, Kelly.
Thanks. I have some questions. The first program we did in partnership with the city of Aspen. And so they sort of cover the costs for in-city providers, and we covered everyone in the county. Is this something we're envisioning extending to all providers? Because or have we talked to the city about matching this effort that we're contemplating?
It's a great question. So the Kids First rolled out an application. It just closed last week. That is their quality improvement application. It's more for books and toys and supplies and things like that, but they do see some applications come in that are more around equipment. They don't see as much structural type stuff. So what we are proposing is that when Valerie and I go to meet with each of the providers, one of the Kids First staff members would actually come with us as well, so that they can hear. So if somebody's saying, well, we just need a ton of new blocks, Kids First can go, oh, that's our program. Come to us for blocks. Or somebody's saying, we need new carpet. They say, well, that's a Pickens County program. Okay. So that's our proposal for kind of trying to make the most of the funds that are available. And of course, 3 of the programs that are in the city of Aspen are in the Yellow Brick Building, which is owned and operated by the city of Aspen. So I don't anticipate we would award any of these types of grants to work on a building owned by the city. I think those providers more often apply for books and things like that, and they qualify for that Kids First program. So that is, yes, we are talking to them. We would like to partner with them, and we think that this is a nice pairing. It's like almost a step up, right? If you need kind of the smaller in-classroom things, we'll send you there, and you can get funded there. And then if you're kind of that next step up, you can come to the county, and everybody's eligible.
And I'll just say, I know one program, and I'm going to send you and Suzanne Wolf an email, that is contemplating some more structural repairs that might implicate our permitting process and permit fees. So I would be interested in what you hear in these conversations, and if there would be a recommendation to waive those or to move money from this budget to that budget to cover those costs as well.
Great.
That's a good
Francie has her hand up. Francie, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. This might be for John. Is John there? I can't tell. It's about the ARPA funds in general. So they're kind of on the chopping block at the state legislature, with the federal legislature. I'm not sure if you talked about this when I wasn't able to listen. But so is there going to be a time limit by which we have to actually spend our ARPA funds before they take them back? Is there the threat of that on the table? And should we be thinking about spending the whole 1,600,000 additional?
Yeah, no, there's definitely a concern there, and I know Ashley did open with that concern, but we do not have any details. You know, we've been working under the guidelines that the ARPA funds were originally distributed under, which gives us a couple years if they're unobligated, and we're looking at ways, Francie, if it looks like it's going to go that direction, that we can encumber or obligate as much of those funds as possible. But until we get a little bit more clarity, we're continuing to move forward under the guidelines that we're currently operating under. But we are working, that's part of this conversation today, is getting some of these funds obligated or encumbered so they can't be clawed back.
Okay, thanks. I just wanted to thank Valerie and Ashley for that presentation and all the research that went into it. And it doesn't seem like very much money, so I'm certainly going to be in favor of it.
Thanks, Francie. Question, or go ahead, Steve.
Oh, I'm fully in favor of spending the money for that, and I hope that every one of the daycare centers can feel like their facilities are better and they're better equipped for serving the kids.
And Steve, last time you, and I believe Greg as well, talked a little bit about engaging with CORE on anything that's around energy efficiency. I did reach out to CORE. They're more than happy to come and do an assessment or a walkthrough in any of these centers that are even thinking about that sort of thing. So
Great,
we can
that's
definitely
great.
work
Thank you for doing that. If I could, of course, my concerns last time were, one, I'm thinking about the cliff effect. Like you mentioned it, but there's not a lot we can do about it. But I'm glad you're still thinking about it, because, when the money's gone, then what? We're creating something that works great as long as the money keeps flowing in. Regarding the scrutiny and the management by the Community Foundation, I think that satisfies my concerns. And it looks like you really have a system worked out where the last question I had were you got to regarding the city and ownership of the Yellow Brick, but like, who are the landlords? Who owns these buildings? Are we paying for upgrades that the landlords should be providing? I guess would be the first question. And what are their obligations, if there are any? And are there opportunities for partnership where we could maybe incentivize them to help maintain their own building by helping out?
Yeah, that is definitely one of our kind of screening questions that we anticipate when we sit down and somebody says, oh, I want whatever. Okay, tell us a little bit more about your structure. Who owns the building? Who makes those sorts of decisions?
Who's responsible for the
Yeah.
carpet or the toilet or the
Exactly.
wall? Or
if it breaks, who fixes it? So we can understand a little bit more.
Right.
I think Kelly's point is a good one. Are we just giving them money so they'll give it back to us in the form of permit fees? Like, let's
Right.
understand a little bit more about what we're signing up for, so that we don't get like Valerie said, we're not just gonna have a blind application and we just give them money.
Right.
You know, tell us a little
Great.
bit more about what you're thinking here, and make sure it checks out and makes sense.
Yeah, my questions are satisfied with this, so thank you. Thank you for the thorough response
You're
since last
welcome.
time. Yeah, it's great.
I did want to let you all know that, thank you for the support. We will start to meet with those eligible applicants and see what's on their wish list. You will see me again during the supplemental budget process coming up here in just a couple weeks, because this money has not yet been put in the budget. So the board has one more look at it when we move the money over to actually be used. And then we would open up a grant application kind of as soon as we legitimately can, with approvals and contracts and stuff like that, and hopefully get some money out so that some of these projects could happen this summer. And then that's why we have that 18-month timeline. So if you missed this summer, you can line up the contractor this winter and hopefully start in this time next year for like a bigger project. And then I'd love to come back to you all after we have round 1 of funding, before we open up round 2 of funding. To Francie's question, I am highly motivated to start to get some more things in front of you all to use our ARPA money. So
Right.
I just want to make sure we have plenty of time to check in on both the staff stipend program, this program, and then start to bring some new ideas in front of you for use of the other funds, which will be around 1.6 million that'll be left.
Great, thank you. This is great. Francia, any other questions? John, comments, questions? I think we're good. Excellent. You
Great, thank
checked
you.
all the boxes today.
Nice to see you.
Thank you for the time.
Thanks for coming in.
Thank you all.
Cheers.
We're excited.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, we are scheduled right now, 5 minutes ahead of schedule, but we've got a break here for a short break for 15 minutes or so. Why don't we come back at 2:45?
Perfect.
All right, off till 2:45. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, we're back for the Tuesday, May 16th Commissioners' Work Session. And today we are going right into a special meeting. It's a public hearing as the Board of Commissioners sitting in as the Redistricting Commission and a presentation on district boundaries. And so I think I need a motion to go in, don't I? Is that correct?
So moved.
I've got a motion and a second from Steve. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and so we are now putting on different hats once again today, and Ingrid Gruder is here. And introduce your team.
Yes.
If there's more.
We are presenting the options for the redistricting, and I'll just give an intro for everyone's regurgitate a little bit for some of us, but for other people who haven't heard it.
Great, and tell me, give us, for the public, your name as well. Thank you.
My name is Lauren Ustery, and I work as a GIS analyst.
Great, thanks, Lauren.
Yes.
Okay. So, as required by statute, after each federal census, commissioners' districts must be revised or altered to assure the districts remain as equal in population as possible, and in no event should there be more than 5% deviation between the most populous and the least populous. County staff, meaning the clerk's office working with GIS, is mandated to present 3 redistricting options with the most minimal changes possible while avoiding analyzing political affiliation, racial or economic disparity, hot-button issues, candidate and officeholder favorability, or any issues that may constitute gerrymandering. Staff has presented 3 options deemed to have the most minimal changes, and a 4th option has been introduced by one of the members of the Board of County Commissioners. This is allowed under statute. The only reason for my distinction between the 3 and the 1 is to satisfy our minimal change possible mandate for staff. So with that, Lauren's going to bring up each option. I'm going to read, because some of it's a little convoluted, the descriptions from the agenda item summary, and then the short pros and cons we have in the agenda item summary, and then I believe that Mr. Child has more comments for the 4th option. Okay?
All right, so on the screen, on all of the screens, this is what we have represented for option 1. So when we go and take a look at this map, it just provides more detail as to the amount of people that we are shifting between districts. Thank you. Sorry, I need to move this guy out of the way. As a description on this one, we are...
Do you want me to read that?
Yeah,
From
sure.
here? Okay, option 1 moves the regions of Lake Wildcat Road, Wildcat Way, and Watson Divide Road to District 3, moves the area north of East Soapers Creek Road, Gateway et al. Into District 5. You can look at that, and then I'll read the couple of pros and cons we had in the...
Can you find that on the map for us, just if there's, I don't know if it...
Yep. So this area is the area from District 4 being moved over to District 5. It represents 169 people. And then we have over here the area around Watson Divide and Lake Wildcat Road from District 4 being moved into District 3, and that represents about 137 people.
Okay, so that's all one contiguous area that would be moved.
Right,
to satisfy
but just
that number 1.
being split between 5 and 3.
Got it.
Yep.
Okay.
And just a quick note on that, when we did an assessment on how that changed the population, we have a percent deviation of 4.67%, which falls within that statutory 5% requirement. So I'll move on to option 2.
Yeah. You guys have the pros and cons, so.
So this represents a little bit of a bigger change geographically.
Okay, This moves the region located to the west of Snowmass Creek Road into District 5 and contours to retain within District 4 the neighborhoods of Lazy O Road, Elk Creek Road, and Rosespur Lane. Moves the area south of Owl Creek Road into District 3.
So looking at that in more detail, the area south of Owl Creek Road that's being moved to District 3 incorporates areas of Two Creeks Road. I think this is Pinecrest and
Would
Faraway Drive. Yep. And then the area being moved from District 4 into District 5 is this red hatched area west of Snowmass Creek Road. And again, that incorporates Capitol Creek as well as Lazy O Ranch.
So could I ask a question? So on this one, when you go up to the top, so you have Lazy O, and then where is, the Gateway's up?
Yeah,
You're
Gateway
bouncing
is
around, so
up
it's-
further north, and that's retained in District 4.
And this is option 2?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. That's what I needed to know. Thank you very
Yes.
much.
And similar to option 1, sorry. The data table shows that it is 4.58% between the most populous and least populous districts. So again, under that 5% requirement. And then looking at option 3, this has or represents a bigger degree of change. It's a little bit more complicated. But if you want to go through.
Yes, this one gets to be a longer description. Similar to option 2, this option moves the region to the west of Snowmass Creek Road to District 5. However, this option also moves the areas of Lazy O Road, Elk Creek Road, and everything to the north of East Sobers Creek Road to District 5. The sliver of District 3 north of Lower River Road is being moved to District 4. Lazy Glen is moving from District 5 into District 4. The northern portion of Lake Wildcat Road is moving to District 3. This contours to the precinct boundary between precinct 10 and 7.
Can you move the map down just so we can kind of look at that northern section,
Yeah.
Make it a little larger.
if it will?
Zoom-
If it will
zoom
cooperate.
out, Zoom,
Yeah, because it's,
zoom out more.
It looks like
There
the
it is.
block is frozen there. Sorry for that.
An area to the east of Snowmass Village containing the Club Commons is moving from District 4 to District 3. A small census block originally in District 2 located north of Centennial Apartments will move to District 3.
So we can take a closer look at that on the map. This is the area north of Highway 82. Sorry, I'm having an issue with this mouse. With this
That's
mouse.
the Lower River Road piece, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So this area right here where my mouse is circling was formerly in District 3. It is being incorporated into District 4, representing 118 people. This segment is additionally being brought in from, it was formerly in District 5. It's being pulled into District 4. This area, formerly in District 4, being incorporated into District 3. This area is kind of around the Pickens County landfill, is being, again, incorporated into District 3.
Does that pick up any people?
It's 16 people in that area.
you know them all by
There's a lot of bears out there.
There are a lot of bears out there.
There's 20 bears and 16 people.
And then this area, formerly in District 4, around Club Commons predominantly, is being moved into District 3. This is the small section from District 3. I'm sorry, I don't know why this is.
It's jumping on
Yeah,
you.
having some issues
There you
with
go.
this
There it
mouse.
is, there it is.
And so this was formerly in District 2. It represents 11 people. It's just north of Centennial, and it's being moved into District 3. And then lastly is this portion formerly in District 4 being moved over into District 5. And it's similar to option 2, where it's this boundary line west of Snowmass Creek Road, but in this option, it does include this area representing or around the Gateway community. So more substantial changes. Looking at the table again with the population breakdown, we're at 4.56% between the most populous and least populous districts.
Okay.
And then moving to option 4.
Do you want,
Yeah, that's
do
just
the
loading.
number of people and then I'll do the description here.
So this one represents a little bit more drastic changes. As you can see, we're effectively pulling in this area. Let me make it a little bit larger. From formerly from District 4, that surrounds the municipal boundary of the town of Snowmass Village. I think.
Do you want me to read that? Yeah.
Right, that'd be great.
Yeah, this option moves the entire region of District 4 within the town of Snowmass Village municipal boundary and a small area around Ziegler Reservoir to District 3. The regions incorporating Brush Creek and Owl Creek, north of Spring Creek and Owl Creek Road, and west of Highway 82 will remain in District 3. The regions of Woody Creek, Aspen Village, Castle Creek, Maroon Creek and Red Mountain, Smuggler, Mountain Valley, formerly in District 3, are combined with the areas of Snowmass Creek and Cattle Creek in District 4. The region north of Highway 82, containing the area around Lower River Road, is moved from District 3 to District 5.
Yeah, so looking at this in more detail on the map, this option moves about a little over 3,000 people from District 4 into District 3, representing the town of Snowmass Village predominantly. It also, again, retains this area of Owl Creek and Brush Creek in District 3. And then it moves almost 2,800 people from District 3 into District 4. And this area contains Castle Creek, Maroon Creek, we have Woody Creek up here, Aspen Village, and then the area around Red Mountain, Smuggler, and Mountain Valley. And then this small portion of, is formerly District 3, representing 146 people, is being moved over into District 5. And that area is around Lower River Road, north of Highway 82. Yeah, so again, that's a little bit more detailed. And I'm happy to spend more time looking at this if you'd like. And then looking at the data table, the difference between the most populous and least populous district is 4.87%.
Is it 4.8? I have 4.78 on my map.
And that was one thing.
Is it recalculated?
Yeah, I had made an error on that data table, and so in District 5, the total is 3,405, where I think before it was stated as 3,408. And that difference of 3 people was 0.11% of a difference. So I apologize for that, but yes, still within the 5% margin.
It doesn't take very many to move very many people to change those percentages,
Yeah,
as I found out.
each person counts.
Because I was
They're
trying to
not-
move the little block of 8 people who were west of East Sopers Creek
Mhm.
into the District 4, and that
Mhm.
put it over 5%.
Right.
Just moving 8 people. Makes, it's
yeah,
amazing.
that's kind of what makes it a challenge too, because you have to follow the census block boundaries. You can't arbitrarily draw a line to go through this redistricting process. And so, yeah, you have to be methodically pulling these census blocks. So if it represents too many people, you can easily be over the 5%.
Patty?
Yeah, I appreciate the board. Well, we learned a lot as far as how this process works, and I've done it before, and I don't remember it being quite as complicated as it is this time, but it is what it is. So in looking at them carefully, and I really appreciate Steve's efforts. I know you'd spent an enormous amount of time, but I for one, support redistricting that doesn't have the greatest amount of change. In other words, redistricting that has minimal amount of change and keeps most of the districts intact, except balancing out those percentages of population. And for your option, Steve, that's a big change to be moving. I mean, now District 4, which is usually Old Snowmass in that area, comes all the way up, and Kelly and I are like in the middle of District 4 with District 1 and 2. And then bringing all of Snowmass into District 3 is also, Snowmass Village is a big change. And it's my understanding in the board's previous meeting, which I was not able to attend, the first one, that the board was kind of leaning towards option 2. And I'm kind of.
Option 1 was, I think, the favored.
I thought it was 2.
It was 1 in the first one, that was the direction.
I'm leaning towards 2. I think it makes the most sense for me. I like the way it divvies things up without making huge amounts of change, and keeping most of the areas still intact. For me, as we know, I think it's more a matter of census, not caucuses. And we've had caucuses. I mean, I have the East of Aspen caucus in District 1 that rarely meets, but that doesn't mean I don't go to other caucus meetings, or people don't come to District 1 caucus, the East of Aspen caucus. So to me, we all go to different caucuses regardless of what district we represent, because technically we have to live in our district to run for office, but we're voted on countywide to represent the county as a whole. So my preference is District 2, unless I'm going to wait and hear from what the rest of the board feels, but that's kind of where.
I'm looking at Francie or Kelly or Steve. I figure, Steve, I'd
I'll
let you go
defer for a
last.
few
since
minutes.
What's that, Francie?
I'll defer for just a few minutes and
Sure,
listen to other
okay.
people.
You ready to talk, Kelly?
I have some questions, I think. Remind me, and these are probably for Rye. Hi, Rye, thanks for joining. Remind me again of our process here. We have 3 meetings, and what do we need to accomplish at each meeting? And then I'm a little confused when I'm looking at the statute, because there says a July 1st date and then a September 30th date. And I want to make sure we're paying attention to any date we don't want to miss. And then I could use a little bit of clarification about how community of interest is considered in our deliberations here. Because it seems to me it says, community interest could include but not limited to shared public policy concerns of urban, rural, agricultural, or trade areas. And so I just want to keep that in mind when I'm thinking about the caucuses too.
Okay. Hold on, let me. Obviously, I'm not John Peacock, but I had to jump on his Zoom thing to get on here. But so the definition of community interest, and I'll try and cover all these as you brought them up, Kelly. Definition of community interest means any group in a county that shares one or more substantial interests that may be the subject of action by the Board of County Commissioners, is composed of a reasonably proximate population, and should be considered for inclusion within a single district for purposes of ensuring its fair and effective representation. That's kind of a broad definition, but it also includes political subdivisions like in municipalities and things like that. So that definition of community of interest, the criteria for determination of districts or county commissioner districts does prioritize maintaining whole communities of interest and whole political subdivisions such as cities and towns. Division of cities and towns is permissible, as is division of other communities of interest if it's necessary to achieve the population objectives and keep the disparity in population under the 5% threshold. So as far as prioritizing the criteria, the statute gives priority to achieving the mathematical population equality between the districts, compliance with the Voting Rights Act of 1965, and then preserving communities of interest, which is on par with keeping districts as compact as possible. And the two are somewhat related with that prior reference I made earlier to the proximity of populations within those communities of interest. As far as the dates go, and I think Ingrid would have to correct me. I believe you just have to have the final plan adopted by September 30. I don't recall the July 1 date, but I can look at that right now unless Ingrid knows off the top of her head what that July 1 date is.
The July date has to do with the clerk's office having to put in there, I believe this is what we were talking about, our election plan, and so that can change some of what goes on.
Okay.
So we're not going to miss a July 1st deadline for anything. I
No,
think
but
we're on
I
track.
actually thought it was later in July, trying to get it done by the end of July so everything would match up. What are you seeing, Kelly?
I'll just read the citation, and this is 30-10-3063.
3063,
Right.
yeah.
It says when a board of county commissioners determines to change the boundaries of commissioner districts or when new districts are created, such changes or additions must be made only in odd number years, and if made, must be completed by July 1st of such year, except in cases of changes resulting from either changes in county boundaries or from a final redistricting plan, in accordance with the next section.
I'm quite not
Sounds
quite sure what
good.
that says.
So, which is related to after the federal census. Okay. I think that
Right.
makes sense.
So we're engaging in
Okay.
that.
Got it.
in
So we're
the
not doing
final
it outside of the census process, which would have been July 1st. We're doing it because of the census, which is September 30th. Okay,
Okay,
thanks
got
for
it.
working through that with me.
Shoo.
I think I either totally understand or I'm totally confused. I guess.
So September 30 is our deadline as far as getting this done. Although I know that Ingrid could tell you more about what other things she has to have in place and have this done by, so that she can get some done.
We'd like to get it done sooner.
Be a lot easier to have it done in July.
Right. I can offer my comments. Did you have more?
No, go ahead. I'm working
My initial comments are that I certainly don't want to make drastic changes if we can avoid it. I'm also thinking about how things change. One thing I really like about the districts as we have them now is, for the biggest extent, at least with 3 and 4 and 5, is that we have a mix of rural and, in my case, in District 3, rural and municipal, and it creates a larger pool of possible candidates for commissioner seats when you have that. And so when I see geographic boundaries shrinking, the population numbers may not change dramatically, but the actual geographic area and the interests of areas may be less represented. And if there's a balance, and tell me if I'm getting out of my lane, Rye, but if it seems like we'd have a balance of generally 3 rural commissioners and 2 municipal commissioners, shifting to a balance of 3 municipal commissioners and 2 rural commissioners. And I hadn't thought much about that, but it did pop into my head this morning quite early. And I just thought, what's the significance of that? And is it time to do something like that? Is it something that we would possibly do after the next census if Snowmass Village were to keep growing dramatically? But is it necessary to do this now? So those are questions that I have for the board. So that's where I am, and I tend to think that I'd rather go with the least change possible, which for me would be District 1 or 2, but I'd have to go back and, forgive me, you have to review it again for me, because as soon as I see more than 2 options, I start getting confused. Thank you.
Yeah. 1 and 2 are definitely the least, yeah.
Rye, I do have a question about the public comment process of this. We have the 3 different hearings of our redistricting commission, and what are the requirements for public comment?
So the statute requires that the commission establish a website which through county residents can submit either proposed plans or written comments or both without attending the hearing. And as far as the timing goes, the plans that are being presented now may not be adopted for another 30 days, within which time additional public comment may be submitted by really whomever in the public is interested in the redistricting process.
So we would have our next meeting, our second meeting, no more, it would have to be 30 days from now?
I'm sorry if I wasn't clear about that. We can't adopt any plan 30 days from now.
So we could have the second meeting, say, in
2 weeks.
2 weeks from now? And the
Yes.
third one, 2 weeks after that, or that kind of a schedule?
I think
I believe that's what we're shooting for right now. I think the last meeting at this point is set up for June 24.
28th. We have
Yeah,
tentatively
28th.
set, we had next Wednesday, the 24th set, so that can be the second meeting. And then the last meeting will be June 28th. And
After there's been the
still
month
30
period
days
for
within
public
there.
comment.
Yeah, yeah. So we're giving more than 30 days.
Do we have a website loaded yet?
Yeah. We did
Yep.
before the April 18th meeting.
I noticed we need to take public comment today, but I also see Francie's hand is up, so after Francie, we'll see if there's any public comment. Go ahead, Francie.
Thank you, Greg. Could we see option 4 on the screen again, please? Okay, I'm finding that I can't look at it on my computer and interpret it at the same time. Okay, so Steve, can you just give me a quick synopsis of why you've brought this forth?
Well, when I looked at the other 3 options and the effect it had on my neighborhood where, the Snowmass Capitol Creek area, it split my neighborhood in some cases into 3 different commissioner districts on the different options. So I started trying to think of another way that it wouldn't fracture neighborhoods as much. To me, the first 3 options are really drastic for the part of the county I live in. So I looked at the map of Snowmass Village, and I was thinking how the city of Aspen has basically 2 commissioners representing the city of Aspen and the close environs to it. Snowmass Village on the different options was actually, in some cases, Snowmass Village was split between 3 different commissioner districts on at least one of the option, and there was no option where it was entirely I don't think there was an option that it was entirely in one commissioner district. Now, I haven't heard from people from like the town of Snowmass Village, what their take on it is. I look forward to their input on it. But my option 4 actually puts the entirety of Snowmass Village in one commissioner district with close nearby neighborhoods which are kind of in their area of interest. So it's a Snowmass Village centric commissioner district that I'm creating on option 4. The other parts of the big purple parts going around District 3, so that's Snowmass, Capitol Creek, Woody Creek, Castle Creek, and Maroon Creek are all mostly rural parts of the county, sort of bedroom communities to the resort community. With the exception of there's the land around the east of Aspen and Smuggler and Red Mountain. I think actually even a little bit of the city limits of the city of Aspen are in what is currently District 3, which would then be part of District 4 in my proposal. But it creates, I mean, these are more areas of common interest with more rural parts of the middle part of the valley. So my option, or District 4 in my option, would be more similar to your District 5 with, like Francie's has three different operating local caucuses in hers. It represents big, vast areas of the rural parts of the county, as well as some are right around Basalt that's more of an urban atmosphere is in Francie's district. So the District 4 in my proposal would be more similar to District 5. We do have a little bit of urban stuff around Aspen, but then the vast majority of it is in rural, more rural part of the county. What it really does is give the town of Snowmass Village more, it gives them a seat in their part of the county, in the Snowmass Village and the area of interest around Snowmass Village, where, including Brush Creek Village, where Greg lives. Greg's water supply comes from Snowmass Water and Sanitation District in his subdivision. It's a nearby subdivision outside of the town limits of Snowmass Village, but it's kind of in that area of influence. So that to me was the main consideration was the communities of interest concept to make it more logical. I started by just putting Snowmass Village in one area and then seeing what is that population, and then adding on several neighborhoods to reach the right population number to make the equal distribution in, amongst the 5 commissioner districts.
Okay, thank you, Steve. So, but in yours, are you moving thousands of people out of one commissioner's district into somebody else's district? Is that what's happening? Like 3,300 people or something? Go from, I guess it's
well,
from...
the people aren't moving. The people are staying right where they are. The commissioner district boundaries are shifting. And to me, this is, to me, it's logical to go ahead at some point in time and put Snowmass Village into basically its own commissioner district. Which to me makes sense. They would get better representation at the county level.
Thank you.
We could do it now. We could do it in 10 years. I think we should do it now. That's why I'm making this proposal now.
But it's true this doesn't take effect till 2024. Is that correct, everybody? Ingrid?
That Rye?
Okay.
when?
So,
Well-
so
I didn't hear an
I
answer.
know, I'm asking Rye
It was
when this
effective.
takes effect, I think.
Well, as soon as the redistricting commission adopts the plan is in
Be in
place.
September.
As far as, how it's implemented from a practical standpoint by Ingrid, that's, it won't be in place for, well, it'll
Is
be
it-
in place for the next election, I guess, so.
Isn't it when the resolution is signed, or can they state in the resolution?
Yeah.
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 So that's, happens this fall.
Greg, can I?
Patty?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll let.
Oh, sorry, Francie, are you done?
I'm confused, outside of the red line redistricting in option 1, is it stay in 3? In District 3, Brush Creek?
I believe it does.
None of that changes.
Yeah, it stays.
Okay. Yeah.
But Francie,
So to me, to summarize my points, or, to take what Steve said and everything into account and kind of try to summarize, it looks to me like option 1 takes a small swath and redistricts it and accomplishes it fairly simply. That's the way I see it. I could be wrong, and I'm happy to look again in a couple of weeks when we look at it again. But at first view, I think that changes it the least. So the redistricting there comes up towards Snowmass Village, but most of Snowmass Village still is extant in District 4, the way I see it.
I've got
That's it for me.
Thanks, Francie.
Well, I just would love
Kelly,
for
and
Steve
then-
to react again on option 1, like point to the geographic areas where it carves up the caucus boundary.
So the Gateway Mesa area,
So that's to the left
the
of
upper left,
Capitol Creek Road.
is in Snowmass Capitol Creek Caucus area.
Snowmass Creek
That
Road.
would go into District 5.
Right.
The areas across the lower Snowmass Creek Road, the black line there, areas east of that would go into Commissioner District 3. And that encompasses part of Snowmass Capitol Creek Caucus and a whole bunch of upper Snowmass Creek Caucus, which is currently in District 4, would be going into District 3.
This is
So
option
can I?
1.
Yeah. So I
In
just.
option 1.
So I just want to understand a little clearly. So Snowmass Caucus, Snowcap Caucus, which is separate from Capitol Creek Caucus,
Well,
would
Snowmass Capitol Creek Caucus is, Capitol Creek and Lower Snowmass Creek is the geographic area.
right, but they split into 2. So
Caucuses.
there's one that's called the Snowmass. What do they call
Upper
themselves?
Snowmass
Upper
Creek.
Snowmass. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's on the east side of Snowmass Creek Road, right?
Well, it's on both sides of it's the whole valley of Upper Snowmass Creek Road.
Okay. So that would get divided into 2
Two,
districts.
based on where the county road is. So the valley, which is like a community of the people living in the valley,
Mhm.
the ones based on which side of the road they live on are going into Greg's district, or on the other side of the road, they'd be in my district
Mhm.
for
And
my
s-
remaining 2
So
years.
they may not speak to each other anymore.
Well, I live like a stone's throw from Kelly's
Sorry, Kelly.
district, because that's just
No,
how it
that's
is.
okay. Okay, and then the gateway is the portion of the Capitol Creek Caucus that would be moved into a different
Into
district,
5.
into District 5. Okay.
One other consideration which I put in on my talking sheet here was and it was Michael Kinsley who pointed this out to me. He's on our Open Space and Trails Board representing Commissioner District 4. And he lives on the east side of Lower Snowmass Creek Road. He would be moved into Commissioner District 3 under option 1. Which would mean I think he could serve out his term, but then he would not be eligible to serve again.
Well, he could
You mean representing District 3?
Yeah, he could
serve again
represent a different
representing his
district.
other districts.
He could run for the District 3 to represent District 3.
But I don't think we take that into consideration when we're it's supposed to be
But
based
that
on
would be an
size.
effect of the
Be called
redistricting
Kinsley
affects.
Mandering.
Yeah, but
Can I have the-
I just have to make this very clear. It's really, it's weird now, Greg, I'm sorry, but it's weird now that District 3 comes back around and takes Mountain Valley, which is at the east end of town. Now it's gonna be District 4, which is further down Valley, that's gonna be coming around and taking Mountain Valley, which is at the east end of the valley. So that to me is,
The commissioners are 20 minutes farther away.
If you do
Yeah.
what?
what's that?
If you do what? What would make that happen, Patty?
In Steve's mapping.
Oh,
Brings
okay.
District 4 all the way up, back around into Mountain Valley. They're already confused up there who represents them anyway. This is,
You know, I think there was a point when Michael Owsley did not know he was representing them.
he didn't, and
Remember
everybody
that?
calls me anyway.
Right.
But that makes it even stranger to be taking what it's always been in my years on at this table. District 4 has been the Snowmass area. District 5 has been the Crystal area and part of the Frying Pan. That's just kind of how people expect their representatives to be representing them. So to bring 4 around up into Mountain Valley, having Greg up there was, yeah, interesting. But now having
Well,
4
it's-
come around
It's
is
the
really
same,
interesting.
I did not change that. I actually I was looking at the boundaries of 1 and 2 and trying to reduce the population. One of them was the highest population, so I thought, well, if we can reduce that population, that makes it easier
Yeah.
then to get within the 5%.
Yeah, well, 4, your map,
But,
option 4 brings your district all the way up to Mountain Valley.
And that, I think that is the biggest fault, having east of Aspen and all that in Commissioner District 3. That, to me, is a funny,
And it's not funny being in 4?
no,
Which
it's
is-
a funny deal, whether it's in 3 or 4, but the only way we could do that, it would be like major
No, I'm not saying
shifting
that.
around of the
I'm saying
population in Aspen.
That's not what I'm
parts-
saying at all. It was
Yeah.
already funny enough being in 3. Now it's even funnier being in 4. I mean, it just seems even stretching it that much further. But I think, again, I think 2 accomplishes what we need without a lot of moving things around. But we'll see where that goes.
I expect it happening.
Did you have a question, Francie?
No, I'm just mumbling to myself about
okay.
trying to get to the right place. Sorry.
Copy that. Okay, I think that maybe what we should find out if we have any, we could open a public hearing and see if there's anyone from the public who wants to comment on this. And they'll have an opportunity next time as well, and probably the time after that. It's a public hearing each session, correct? I think every one of these meetings is a public hearing. Is it? It doesn't look like we have anybody. Okay, well, we'll try to make it more interesting. Okay, I'm gonna close the public hearing and bring it back. So what do we have to do to satisfy our obligation for the day? Do we have to do a preliminary vote, or are we just gonna discuss it three meetings in a row and vote at the last meeting? Rye is,
Yeah, defer to Rye. Here.
Yeah, you don't have to take any action today, other than discuss it, consider public comments, if any. Doesn't sound like we have any, and then, move it along to the next meeting. And the final action the board takes is at that last meeting to adopt one of the plans.
got it, thank you.
So at this point, all 4 of them would be equal in terms of moving forward. We maybe have people favoring 3 different of the 4 options, it sounds like. And I really am looking forward, I hope we get some good public comment on this, because I haven't had that much feedback about what the public thinks about the 4 different plans.
Now, one question I have is, it seems like they're all still in flux, so these boundaries could actually shift. We could come up with an option 5 in the next 2 more meetings. Hopefully we won't, but it's possible. Is that
I
right?
have an idea.
Kelly, yeah, I was just thinking I've got one too. So what do you
Well,
want to share?
It's funny to, it'd be fun to be able to like tinker with this, but when I look, I'm less concerned about the upper Snowmass caucus because they seem to be fairly defunct. And to me, if you're not operational, you're not really a community of interest because you're not engaging on policy and the criteria that laid out. So I do have concern and interest in sort of keeping the Capitol Creek caucus together because they are active and they do engage on policy and they do make recommendations to our board, and I think they, in my mind, would meet criteria for a community of interest. But I'm also, I think Steve's option is a bit farther afield than de minimis changes. In my assessment. So I guess I'm just wondering when I look at this, if we're looking at Gateway, because I look at the west side of Capitol Creek, Old Snowmass, Capitol Creek Road, like that's where population lives. Whereas directly to the east, at least from what I can tell, there's a few houses and a whole bunch of BLM land. So I'm wondering if there is some jiggering to be done where we would look at the intersection of Brush Creek and Owl Creek and move that triangle of people into District 3 and move Gateway back into District 4.
On which one you look at?
You're talking like Sinclair then up there?
The peninsula you
Off
see on
Owl
the
Creek?
bottom right.
Where
purple
Brush
peninsula.
Creek and Owl Creek intersect.
Kind of by
Right
Two
now,
Creeks?
how they're being, I'm looking at option 1, how they're being drawn into District 4.
Which is kind of by where Two Creeks is? Is that intersection?
I don't know all the names
that
of
the
those.
upper
It's
north
where like
mesa
Anderson
where we are?
Ranches, and it's before, it's closer to Brush Creek than Two Creeks.
Okay, so it's down further.
Yeah, so
Okay.
where the,
This
That's the
triangle
Water
here
and
on the
Sand
map?
District.
right,
Kelly?
the far Fairway, 3 homes.
Oh, that
And
little,
then the one up
above the
I don't know
Aspen
if that
Creek.
helps or if that just throws us off even.
that takes right out, those homes are in Snowmass Village.
Pretty unpopulated spot.
Some to make the 5%.
Well, Brush Creek to Owl Creek is kind of a lot of condos.
To make the 5% work, you're gonna have to put something into 5 or 4. And so,
Yeah,
yeah.
something has to go into 5 to build its population up. That's essential.
Count the new baby cows? You said there's a lot of them.
But maybe moving the lower River Road into 5, that was 140 people or so? Was that right?
So, oh yeah, a little over
can't
100. I don't know
remember
the
now.
exact
You're
number.
kind of doing a shift this way.
Yeah. I could play around with the map
You're like
some more and
pinching
see.
it this way and
I got
popping
pretty
it
good
that
at
way.
We're swinging it.
Another thing, I mean.
Again, I know we could play with this like
That's a
forever.
good thought.
I ended up not changing either 1 or 2 at all, but there could be some tweaks there which would reduce the one that's the maximum population to make it a little
Yeah, which is
less. Then that would make the shifting in the down valley areas, I think, maybe easier to accomplish. And I don't know, I ended up leaving them exactly like they are because that was the least, it leaves it the same, so that's the least impact. But what do you, Kelly and Patty, what do you think about the possibility of shifting some of the 1 and 2 boundaries a little bit? I don't want to move either one of you out of your district that you're in. Now
Doesn't matter to me at this point.
That really complicates it if we do that.
It wouldn't change my
I
life.
wouldn't vote for that myself. so.
Yeah, I
Taking
mean,
it year
I'd
by
still be
year.
where I am. You can't throw me out of office by
Yeah.
shifting the boundaries. Good try, Steve. But, yeah, the only thing that Mountain Valley should be in District 1, but it's not. It got, that happened a long time ago, and the problem is it's one person's mailbox is in District 1 and the other one's in her house is in District 3, so where does she reside, where her mailbox is or where her physical home is? We had a long discussion about
If there
that.
were a way,
Pillow is.
How does the
I mean,
census block
ideally,
work?
if we could take the east of Aspen part and move it
I'll tell you whose
into
house.
another, well, I think it would make sense if it went into 1 or 2, not into, it's in District 3 now. The reason it's in District 3 is we needed to get some population in the down valley districts. That's why that ended up that way.
Not our problem, you guys aren't having kids and stuff down there, Steve, I don't know, but. So you're talking about, Kelly, you were talking about taking 1 and shifting, or 2?
I was looking at option 1. It may not matter, yeah.
Okay, and doing a swivel.
So put more, well, I
I think you'd
understand
have
your,
to make 3 changes.
I understand your concept, and I'll play around with them. I have the big map with the numbers on it. I could play
You would
around with that.
fold
and see.
Gateway into 4.
And
you
then
put
shift.
that old Upper River Road leg, you know,
Into,
square into 5.
And
And then
then-
if you needed to adjust 3, you could do that Brush Creek, Owl Creek.
or somewhere along
But the
there.
Brush
I can
Creek,
take a look
Owl
at that.
Creek,
I think it was one option that I had considered, but then it made, it created an island where there was a disconnect in the district. I can take another look at that.
With
'cause-
Snowmass Village Snowmass Village would have, most of Snowmass Village would still be in 4, and part of it would be shifted into 3.
But I don't think that
Which it
that
already
it
is
touched. It was like
part
an
sticking into
island.
3 is mostly, I
for Gateway.
think, Wildcat, which is
Mhm.
more sparsely populated.
I didn't think anybody actually lived there.
Anyway,
Okay.
having said that, I'm more inclined to 1.
With a shift.
But
I could do 1 with a shift or 2 as is at this point, but we got a ways
I
to
think
go.
that's where I am. I think we've run over time, actually, believe it or not. This was fascinating and fun. Philosophically, if we can go there, it seems to me that the community is best represented when you have, you know, diversity of populations voting and putting forth candidates. It's not about voting, because we vote across all the borders, all the districts. But the candidates, it would be great to be able to pull candidates from rural into 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. You know, it'd be great to have. I would slice it a lot differently if given too much time. But I'm not going to. But I do philosophically like the idea that we have fielding candidates from both rural and municipal areas for the same seat. I don't see a problem there. It seems to me that may be contrary, but it might engender consensus in a way, or, you know, broader thinking on the parts of the candidates, rather than a candidate who's really focused on the special interests of their particular spot. So that's where I am today, but this has been really helpful and useful. Thank you. I don't see any other hands up from anybody. And if
Greg, I'm going to take off.
oh, Francie has to
Let
go.
us know,
Thanks for coming,
Francie, if
Francie.
there's anything we can do.
Do I need a motion to adjourn the special meeting?
Yes, so moved.
From,
Second?
Bye-bye.
okay, and.
Did we
whoever-
open the
you got
public
whoever you
comment?
want.
Yeah.
We did, and we closed it,
I missed
and
it.
so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all. We'll see you again in a couple weeks.
Great,
To
thank
be
you.
continued.
Thanks, ladies, thank you.
Bring crayons and
aren't you glad we
markers.
got to do it over?
Yeah, we get to do it 2
1
more
and
times.
1A.
How exciting is this gonna be?
And I have to commend Lauren. She is.
And that's not easy.
She can perform magic. I'll tell you.
With a
that.
smile.
Happily.
She must like this.
Until she walks out of the room and goes, ah!
It'll drive me nuts.
Okay, thank you very much. We're gonna keep moving since I wanna keep us on schedule. Well, maybe we are on schedule. I got you out 4 minutes early. Sorry about that. A review of future agendas, and John Peacock has magically popped onto the magic screen.
Yep, I've been here the whole time. I never know whether to keep my camera on or how big I am in the room. So I kept it off, but I have been here the whole time. So I'll try and get you a little bit further ahead here. Really, the only thing of note for you is we will be trying to add some time in on June 13th for further discussion of the growth committee recommendations. Those will be coming to you
Fancy won't be.
the previous week. That June 6th meeting is gonna be a pretty long one. You all start at about 10 in the morning and we'll go till 6. But you've got some more time on the 13th. And so we will be adding that in, and your agendas are starting to fill out here.
So John, is Francie gone on the 13th of June, or is she just gone on the 14th?
Do not believe she is. We have her noted as gone on. She is gone on the 13th.
Just
Right.
a heads up there, John.
Well, we can try to get her input to staff beforehand.
Or ask her if she wants to be.
Yeah,
part
I
of the
mean,
discussion.
there's going to be multiple bites at that apple. Obviously, there's going to be more than one follow-up conversation.
We should just run it by her though, too, so she knows.
Sure.
Okay, that's what you've got for us?
That's
on
all I have.
Future agendas?
Yep.
Okay, Patty has a comment.
Okay, Thursday, this was so confusing because Redstone is not on our future agendas, was not on our agendas that list things today, but it is noticed on the website and the packet is loaded, but I wasn't sure what was going on. So it was just interesting it wasn't included, like the Coal Basin thing is on here and the airport open house is on here, but the Redstone STR is not on our future agendas, but the packet is on the website. So I need to find out what the board is gonna do for transportation. We are going, right?
That's the plan.
To Redstone you're talking about?
On the 18th, this Thursday,
Mhm.
5:30.
I'm gonna have to drive because I have to take a kid to piano in Carbondale.
Okay. Greg, what do you, just so we can figure this out,
I might want a carpool.
why don't we talk, I just found out my car is done. So tomorrow I have to go clean out my son-in-law's car, pick up my car. Hopefully I can afford it without hawking my dog in my house and my son-in-law's car. So Greg, let's talk about carpooling. Let's talk about it, because I may be going from Redstone to Glenwood and then on to Grand Junction on Friday. So
Yeah, that's fine.
we'll figure it out. We can always meet somewhere in Carbondale and carpool up.
And I might
133.
want to carpool. I was actually thinking of going up there in the afternoon,
Hanging out?
exploring looking at some things.
Okay.
So I might do that.
Why don't we
take
just,
my
why
own
don't the
car.
three of us stay in touch and we'll see what Francie's gonna do. If she wants us to pick her up on the way up or drop her off on the way back or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'll have to get a car, county
So,
car.
yeah, so maybe we can get a car reserved. We'll have to have somebody do that.
Great. Okay, thank you for that. I'm going to keep us moving here onto our next department updates. For me, we'll go very quickly. Patty, do you want to
Okay,
start?
ACRA, the food and wine starts on Friday, June 16th, runs through Sunday, June 18th. The luncheon is on Thursday, June 15th, and I'm trying to find out how we get tickets. It wasn't on the website because it's a members-only luncheon, but I will work on that to see if we can. If anybody's interested, send that information, and I'll talk maybe. Is Charlotte in town, or is she away?
She is away right now, but is coming back later this week.
Well, let me see what I can figure out, because I just want to see board interest. And John, I know how much you love that luncheon, so, and Steve's never been to any food and wine, so we might have to drag him there. But let me see what I can find out between today and Thursday and see if anybody's interested.
And just for the record, the luncheon is lovely.
It's
a
great.
lovely
It's
event.
so much fun, you guys. But it also sells out quickly, so I'm trying to find out and get us in there. So that's it for ACRA. Economic development, the seminar we had a couple weeks ago was great, awesome. The discussion by the hospital CEOs was really amazing. What they're doing collaboratively was very interesting. How they are, rather than doing redundancy of services, they're trying to work together. Like, for example, share an endocrinologist, 2 days in Vail, 1 day in Aspen, and maybe 1 day in Kremling, or once a month in Kremling. I mean, just so, rather than rather doing the specialty things better than having everybody try and do them at some level. They're cooperating, which I thought was really a great idea. The attendance wasn't as much as normal. Elizabeth Warner Gardner from the state demographer was not there, but she had a young man who did a presentation who actually had a sense of humor. He got up there, we're like, oh no, he's just going to be numbers, and he was pretty funny, but great information, great data. It should be on the COG, Northwest COG Economic Development District website if anybody wants to pull up the state demographers. There's some interesting documentation of our aging population, and it's a different age group than what's usually in detainees in our jail. They're older population, which I think we were all pretty much aware of, but that information was really good. And Intermountain TPR, I need to set up a meeting with Brian to find out what's happening with monies for projects that are not on our TPR list, but are the things, for example, the improvements they were talking about doing in Glenwood Canyon. And I haven't heard anything more about Cottonwood Pass, but I'll try and check in with Brian and bring you guys up to speed on that. And that's what I have.
Thanks, Patty. Francie's not here today, so we're going to move on to Kelly.
Okay. Let's see. APSHA, you may have read in the paper the efforts to do the right sizing program, which I talked about a little bit. We also had a request from, I forget what the neighborhood, it's like Ajax Avenue, Smuggler.
Oh, yeah.
It's not your neighborhood, but it's
above me, like
Smuggler Mobile Home Park. I don't know exactly what the
on the
different
back row.
Called.
It's my district.
No, it's
There
not.
you go. Well, they're requesting that their categories be reassigned to an upper category so that they can recoup monies for desired investments that they wish to do in their units. Like some of them are interested in replacing their aging mobile homes with stick-built or modular type of units, but they would like to be able to recoup cost when they go to sell that. And so their request of APSHA is to be reassigned a higher category. And we haven't made a decision on that. I think APSHA staff feels like it's a pretty straightforward request, but I'm trying to just think through concerns related to
Categories.
yeah, and like people bidding, on who, like future bidders on those, and then how is that equitable to people who are, like, say, in Centennial, who they want their categories to go up, or they want to go to RO to be able to recoup investment in their own repairs, but which aren't mobile homes. Like, we're sort of debating, should we be treating mobile home properties differently than, condo
Stick-built.
structures.
Interesting. Some of the ones on Ajax, I think, are still owned by businesses. I think there's maybe one or two. I don't think there's, like Carl's Pharmacy used to own one in there.
So it's tough because you want to sort of incentivize, this is
Improvement. of the
yeah,
property.
yeah, they want to live in nice homes and they're willing to pay
Yeah.
for it, but they want to recoup that. And how do we do that in a way that's sort of fair across the system? So
Is that an APSHA concern only, or does it involve the city?
no, it's squarely in APSHA's. We're told by the city attorney it's squarely in APSHA's wheelhouse
So it's
to
not- there's not a
decide
land
about
use
how
concern.
about how those categories are assigned
That
for this.
subdivision, Ajax Avenue, was a housing mitigation for the Aspen Preserve, which is at the base of Red Mountain, over off of Willoughby, Michael Lipkin's project. Totally separate from the Smuggler Mobile Home Park. It's Smuggler Mountain Park or Smuggler Run.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So so we have that going on that we're working through, and then we don't have a meeting this week because we were supposed to have a meeting next week to hear from our attorneys, and we have to hold a hearing with someone who's being evicted from a Truscott rental unit.
Did the city meet with we only had one candidate for
Oh, we
APSHA
haven't
board.
heard.
I
Did they
don't
not
know
met?
if they interviewed him yet. I don't remember.
Okay,
I saw
just
an
wondering if
email
there's
from
anything.
John was going to look into that.
And if you give me a sec, I can just
John
I
might
can
have
look
it.
it up.
John, do you know if the city interviewed?
Yeah, I know they had the planned interview. Now I'm forgetting the date, Patty. But they do have it on.
Okay, well, it's planned.
They already know.
Yeah, I don't see any info about his.
Okay, what
Anyway,
else you
so,
got for us?
Let's see, CCI, as you all know, we're at the end of the legislative, we've reached the end of the legislative session, so there's not a ton going on about that. I would encourage anyone to attend the legislative debriefings or to listen to the Colorado Sun's legislative debriefing. And
What happened with the property tax bill? Did it get carried over? Did they gonna
no,
have a
it
special
passed,
session?
and there will be Proposition HH on the ballot. And I know
It
I'm gonna get
passed.
some things screwed up with
That was
that,
cool.
but it affects how they're gonna lower the residential assessment rate for several years. If, if a county has less than 20% increase in their assessed values, they will get 100% backfill from the state for the reduction in rate. If you're over 20%, you don't get any backfill. So there's some things going on with that.
So, real quick, may I, Greg? It's my understanding that the backfill was gonna come from Tabor reserves.
Right.
So, that means if the Tabor reserves are used for backfill, does that lower the amount of Tabor refund Colorado income taxpayers would be getting?
Yeah.
So if I own property in Colorado and I I don't pay taxes in Colorado, I live in Florida, for example, I'm getting the benefit of a lower property tax, and it doesn't really bother me how you backfill because I wouldn't get Tabor anyway.
Right.
So for me, the concern is the governor's saying I want to keep people where they live. What he's saying then is I'm going to keep people living in Florida because they're going to pay a lower property tax in Colorado and they don't really care about the Tabor credit. And that's a disconnect for me.
No, and we really should pay a lot of attention, I think, to how these conversations shape up, because there's still the potential, all these machinations were happening because of the potential that a private citizen group is going to put a ballot initiative on the ballot this year which would cap any growth in assessed value to 3% or inflation, which to me is like a completely regressive approach to taxation. And that's exactly what happens, is people who have gained all this value are not paying an equivalent increase or any commensurate increase in tax.
Well, I have concerns.
It's a messy situation for sure.
Yeah, I have concerns, so I would like, if you could keep me,
Yeah.
just reading what I've read, it's like, what is this really doing for the people of Colorado?
Right. Well, it's trying to stop something like what they call the California Prop 13, which you may have
I'm
read a
very
letter in the
familiar with
editor
that.
today of somebody advocating that we need a Prop 13. Anyone who's listening, we do not need a Prop 13 in Colorado.
We don't want
it's
a Prop
completely
13.
regressive. We need to argue against that as kind of this conversation takes more shape. But so that's the tax situation. And
Thank you.
CCAT, again, we're in like legislative debriefing kind of process. I think their debrief is next week on Thursday, and they generally send out invites to everybody if you
I
are
get 'em.
interested in listening to that. The Colorado River Basin, we meet on Monday. We'll be talking about several grants and getting a hydrology update from the state hydrologist.
Lake Powell's coming up a foot a day, that's what I'm told.
Oh my gosh, I can't imagine. Like, I just drove back from. I went to Vegas with the kids this weekend,
right.
and there were just bridges over the Colorado River. I'm like, this bridge is going to be underwater
Wow.
in a month. Like, that's
There
how
you go.
the water's already getting.
So by
close.
June 14th,
Gotta
you're
get
gonna
down
be,
there.
Yeah, I'm really curious. Anyway, and then the CJCC, you all heard our presentation at the end of April, and we haven't met, though I do understand that the consultant has a draft of the programming.
perfect. Oh, great.
So he's
Okay, moving on, Steve.
That was good stuff.
So looking at the RTCC, I'm going to skip the CCI stuff. We're going to have a lot more on that. CCI summer meeting is coming up in Vail the first right at the end of May and the 1st of June on our 5th Tuesday days. So the RTCC, Charles McCarthy had been the mobility manager for Northwest COG, and
Right.
he resigned. So John Stavney has actually been the mobility manager, filling in
Not
that
a,
slot.
Not a surprise.
And I offered to be the chairman of the RTCC. I am the elected official representative on that and also on the RAC committee for Northwest COG. And I can run the meetings much better than any of the other members because of my experience being on an elected board. So I am now the chair of that as well as the RAC, and each of those meets 4 times a year, like quarterly. So it's not really a heavy lift, but running the meetings is fairly easy. So the Vintage, the Regional Advisory Committee has not met. We'll be meeting soon. Club 20 has chosen its new executive director, Brittany Dixon, who has been serving as the interim executive director, was selected. And she ran the whole meeting the spring meeting of Club 20, and she will do a good job.
So is Rachel still doing that?
Rachel's still doing that, as she has an individual membership.
Right. I know she does it through the election process that you guys do at the library.
Yeah, and once we do 2 years at a time. I don't know if she'll continue. She's no longer secretary of the executive board of Club 20. And this last time she was on vacation after she was no longer on city council. So I'm not sure how active she will be. One longtime member, Les Mergelman, who I have known him for, he lives sort of in the Cedar Ridge area, and I knew him through the Colorado Ag Leadership Program. And he was a longtime Club 20 member and would always do a steak fry at Club 20 meetings. And he just passed away.
Oh.
He had diabetes, and I think that probably led to his death. But I was sad to hear that. Senior Council's meeting tomorrow. We are plugging away, trying to get some more new blood in there, and everybody's inviting people to come. We've had, several interested people showing up at the meetings just to, test the waters for it.
It's a matter of time for everybody.
Yeah. So tomorrow's the meeting. I always go and I go to the senior lunch. Then I attend the meeting afterwards. So that's coming up. Let's see, the OSGC, the Opioid Settlement Governance Committee. We have a whole bunch, an RFP was put out for the 3 areas where we need vendors to operate the 3 areas of services to use the money we have collected. And so there are, one of the areas, there were 8 different vendors applied for the RFP. So we are all right now looking at their applications and rating them. So Kelly Lyons and I are the 2 from Pitkin County working on that. Let's see, I should give a report on the EDI committee, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee. We met for 8 hours last week. We were taking the report. We kind of did editing and comments. So there were some minor editing of the final report from the consultant. And if you remember Lamont, who did the training for us, so he was there the full 8 hours. It was really fun.
Which day was it?
Well, we did on
Tuesday or Wednesday? No, not Wednesday.
It was Thursday, let's see, Friday, I can't even remember now.
It was one of those
He
days.
was with us at the Board of Health retreat.
Oh, it was? Oh, I
on
wonder if I
Thursday.
Yeah,
remember
it
that
was
one.
like Wednesday and
So you
Friday.
must have
Wednesday
stayed over.
morning, and then I had to leave early to
Yeah.
come here for our meeting.
Right.
So it's great working with him again, but the committee was it's really an awesome group of county employees working on that. And we came up with a whole bunch of action plans. There will be a continuation of an EDI committee who are county employees who've been involved in it all along, and I think they'll probably add some more members now to kind of carry the whole effort forward, and they'll be making recommendations to us as commissioners on where to go with it, what recommendations they have. So they have some awesome, really good recommendations.
Great. Is that it?
Mhm.
Thank you. I'm going to shift directly to Board of Health right now. We did have our retreat on Thursday. I was reappointed as the chair.
Oh, good.
As much as I tried to find other candidates. Krista Giesel is still the vice chair. Dr. Giesel agreed to be vice chair again. We had a long session with Lamont. His last name just lost it. We did that. We welcomed new members. It was the first time in person we'd seen Liz Stark, who's now on the Board of Health.
Oh, I know. She's great.
And then also our new member from Snowmass Village is Susan Merolt. It was great to have her there. And everybody showed up, and it was a good meeting. We talked about the recommendations for action plans regarding mental health, and then climate being the two things that came to the top. And so we'll be hearing more about that. I'll move back to CC4CA. CC4CA has their annual retreat in Vail on June 8th and 9th. And for me, that's a conflict because I've got RAFTA's retreat on the 8th and 9th, and that's a priority for me for the annual retreat. So they're all lining up. If there's somebody who wants to attend the CC4CA annual retreat, we should talk about that.
June 8th and 9th?
June 8th and 9th in Vail, yep. And it's possible, I don't know if Kara was kind of participating in some of the CC4CA meetings we were having earlier, so it's possible staff may want to go.
I am your alternate, but I can't.
You can't do it then either. I know
family
that day, that's the first,
obligation.
second Thursday of every month is always just jammed. CC4CA I thought was interesting regarding 213 and 1255, and that because there's so many members now, their hands are kind of tied. I think we had a lot of members who were against, but then they had enough for that they took a somewhat neutral position, I think, at the end of the day. Monitor or whatever the other option is, which is a little frustrating, but there you have it. The CC4CA policy committee gets together and goes through our policies with a fine tooth comb, and it's funny. It's like a committee. It requires the entire group. It's a unanimous decision on any vote. So anytime somebody wants to change a comma in the policy, it takes a unanimous vote of the board, which to me is just so cumbersome. But there you have it. But CC4CA got a lot of great work done this year, and I think it's worth our membership, and they are raising our membership rates by a few percent, less than inflation, that's for certain, but we can anticipate that in our bill, and I think we've already paid it. Moving on to CORE. CORE had, let's see, what can I tell you about CORE? Most recently, CORE met some of the CORE board and Bill Sterling, who was a founder, John Doyle from the city. I met with Jim True, their city attorney, and John Ely and Kara and Tessa from the city to discuss REMP, and just so we got a real understanding of the original intent and the actual charter for REMP, and how it should be understood and going forward as we watch REMP declining. And Kara and Dallas Blaney, who's the CEO of CORE, are planning to meet, and I asked for a presentation to this board at some point, sometime soon, just to get us back up to speed. So we, and maybe even with the joint meeting with the CORE board, so that we have an understanding of where we're going, where CORE is going, and where we're going from here regarding REMP, and then CORE, and the things that CORE is, the initiatives CORE is working on, which include their new nonprofit 501c3 status, which allows CORE to do one, fee for service, to philanthropic, development, as well as work, with the REMP funds from the city and the county as they dwindle. QQ has their QQ's meeting is coming up on, is it June 23rd?
Is it one here? Is it the one at
It's
the
going to
library?
be here in Pitkin County, and it may include paddle boarding, is what they were hoping Kelly and I would come up with. And they've also
We
asked,
paddleboarded with them and.
yeah, we paddled with them
Crescent
because
View.
we last
Remember,
summer.
you
It was
have to
great.
shuttle up there and don't double park.
Right, yeah, we have
Don't
to be
worry.
good citizens.
Take them down to town on the Crystal River paddleboard down there.
The QQ was asking us if we would like to submit any ideas for our presentation about water and the upper, flow issues. And I sent a query to Kelly and John Ely and Laura about, what do we want to talk about? If we were to present to QQ on headwaters, water issues, what's the pertinent suggestion? And mine was, what do we know about the increased capacity of the Arkansas project to take more of our water? And what are we doing about it? And what?
That's been, have
So
they been
that's-
brought up to speed on Crystal? Wild and Scenic,
And
Kelly?
we haven't, that's another proposal we can make to them to talk about that. And then there are probably some other issues as well we could have available on that presentation.
It's gonna be a lot of water up at.
Yeah,
North
there's gonna be a
Star.
lot happening there. RAFTA, as you probably all know, we've bought and we're working on renovating the hotel in Glenwood Springs, which will bring, I think, about 40 or 41 units of affordable workforce housing to RAFTA. And specifically, I've asked that RAFTA talk to CORE about helping advise them on electrification and energy efficiency, things like that, because it's very easy to fall back, as we know. You're renovating an old building, it's easy to just put in a new gas boiler or put in a new an electric baseboard rather than a heat pump. And, it's so expensive. And so I know they're going to be speaking, staff on both levels from CORE and RAFTA are going to be speaking about what possibly could RAFTA do in an innovative way to bring this new hotel online as housing with expediency. There's a time frame which may actually dictate how we do the retrofits.
Greg, is
working
that
on
the Red Mountain Inn?
Is it the same one that we were
It's
gonna
not
buy?
the Red Mountain. It's
It's the roadway.
it's the roadway. Thank
Roadway,
you.
okay.
Roadway.
I thought they bought the Red Mountain one too.
No, we were talking about it, but we didn't.
Okay, roadway.
You didn't want the swimming pool.
Yeah. So anyway, it's a great thing. But when you think about just with RAFTA and or any property in Glenwood Springs, that hotel, that property is located next to a cold river and a hot springs underground, and you think, is there a possible for geothermal, things like that, and maybe that's where some creative thinking and, who knows if it's even possible, but it's kind of shocking. If this was Iceland, the whole town would be on
I'll check Iceland
geothermal
out
heat.
for you when I'm there.
You can show us what do they do in Iceland, as we're trying to meet our climate objectives at RAFTA and elsewhere. RAFTA's biggest bang for the buck for climate would be to get people on the bus, and that's been our primary focus. Even if it's a diesel bus, it's better than a bunch of cars. So while we want to electrify buses and electrify the charger network and electrify and make our buildings more efficient, getting more people to ride transit is where the low-hanging fruit is and biggest impact we can have on carbon emissions. Okay, I'm running out of steam here. RWAPA. RWAPA had their summit, and I didn't go because I had a meeting with Board of Health. And
I went, Francie
you were
went
there.
for a little bit of it. I
Great.
was there the whole time. It was excellent. They put together a really good program.
Great presentations, yeah.
Yeah.
And there are some that I'd been familiar with, having seen them in various places, but it was great to see that, and I think there's a recording of it, but I haven't seen it yet. Regarding Workforce Investment Board, I don't participate in that, so it's still on my list, but I
Oh, well, they've
honestly,
had 5 meetings. Where have you been?
yes, somehow I missed these meetings, and I apologize. As for the U.S. Forest Service, I can say I did run into Kevin Warner at the recent core presentation of the Coal Basin project, which I reported on last time. And it was nice to see Kevin there, and the U.S. Forest Service is on board with the plans for this summer for Coal Basin right now, and they are taking public comment, and I think we talked
There's
about
a
that
meeting
last
tomorrow
week.
in Redstone.
Yeah, they'll be doing the same presentation again in Redstone and soliciting public comment. But this is a much more benign coal basin initiative without big trucks or anything like that. It's going to be high-flying helicopters and drones that can sniff methane from a high altitude, and then ground-based portable methane sniffers that they can leave out like a wildlife camera that can do a 24 or 36-hour or 72-hour methane scan of the areas, and those will get moved around. That's the plan for the summer. So they're still working on that. And I think that's all I'm going to say. Thank you.
I have one real quick, I know we're going to do open discussion, but before I forget, because Greg, I want you to know this. There's a trial program going on in the state of Massachusetts to do energy efficiency upgrades, grants and stuff for short-term rentals.
Wow.
It's a incentive. And I just was, I can't remember where I read it, one of the papers, but I'm like, oh, maybe that's something we should share with Greg, because I think he would.
So you're suggesting we offer energy upgrades for people doing short-term rentals to incentivize the upgrades or incentivize the rentals?
I don't know, but I think they're only offered in rural remote, so.
Right. Okay, John, did you want to throw, I saw some motion
I
there.
see
and I don't know
staff in the room, so.
They're not yelling at us. We haven't said anything. Okay, I think we're good. We're not in trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to take us right into board open discussion. We have a minute left, but we're only a minute ahead of schedule, so that's fine.
Ingrid came back.
Ingrid did come back. I saw her. Great, thank you. Thanks for pointing that out. I saw you, and then I got wrapped up in what I was saying.
We must have messed up. Ingrid's back.
Yeah, what did we do?
No, I just wanted to inform you that the clerk's office is having a retreat. You were talking a lot about retreats. Monday the 22nd, so we will be closing at noon. We've done ads. The office is doing the DISC assessment. Ashley Pearl is facilitating, and just wanted to let you know.
Oh, great.
So.
So disco retreat? Is that what-
Yeah, the staff wishes.
In some far tropical place?
Yeah,
I
no,
hope.
Elderville Fire Department.
Is that where you're having it?
Yeah, we should get a
That's
disco ball,
dangerously
because
close
I
to the bowling
understand
alley.
that Clint can really do
I think
a
John
number.
Peacock has one. Don't you have a disco ball, John?
Well,
We're getting slap
that-
happy here.
Yes, it's a long story, but it's broken.
Okay, have a good retreat.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks,
I hope
Ingrid.
they have little umbrella drink things in the drinks.
Kara's
Um,
sitting here too.
And Kara's
Kara,
here. Do you
We
want-
we
have
must
anything
really
that-
be in trouble.
Is there anything you want to tell us?
I think Kara should be on, and then Abby, could you promote Miles Graham and Alana Ploss,
Calling her Libby for some.
analysts? Yep. And I'm sorry, Greg, were you ready for open discussion? I just kind of.
Yeah, no, we are right on schedule.
Okay, well, what we would like to, I think Kara's in the room now, but what we would like to chat about real quickly is a roadmap for follow-up on 1255 and some of our thoughts on moving forward with that. And Kara, Can I hand it over to you from there, or?
Sure.
Do you have visuals for us, or is this just chat?
Chat initially, I
Okay.
guess. So just real quick, I know not all the commissioners have met the team that we brought on to help with House Bill 1255. Many of you have seen Miles Graham in some other hats. So we brought them on a short agreement, and then his staff, Alana Ploss, to help with the lobbying efforts with 1255. They had done a lot of coalition work on transportation efforts, the TRP funding that went through, and had a lot of connections through the Western Slope across varying different municipalities and different kind of demographics, and so had some connections that we were able to really lean into to build a coalition beyond what we've typically been using. So they were instrumental, and we have still been working with them. And one of the conversations, as we were debriefing on House Bill 1255, that is it's on the governor's desk and will be signed within about 30 days, is the momentum and attention that Pitkin County did get at the state legislature, as well as the efforts of building out that coalition that ranged from Fountain to San Miguel County and the Water District, and a lot of different things in between, and how to find that space at the state this summer with the legislators, with the governor's office, to see whether it might be a reworking of 1255, but knowing that there's an opportunity with 213 to start to tell our story, to start to tell why our story of land use with climate, with affordable housing, actually is something that should be considered as they are looking for other options in the next session. So what we've done is we put together a very high-level roadmap of how to continue the efforts with the coalition and get to have a seat at the table with some of these state agencies over the course of the summer. But we have only done that in a small group as a debriefing, and really wanted to come to all of you today to see if that was the direction you all as the board wanted to continue to pursue over the summer in preps for the next legislative session. And before I hand it over, I just asked Kelly, is there any more context you'd add to that?
No, I thought it was important for us to get board direction on whether to pursue, more effort and conversation and coalition building and resource dedication towards this topic.
Yeah, I think that's a great roadmap. I think that's something we definitely need to do. We definitely need to have a seat at the table. I, of course, would like to send the governor a quick letter saying, thank you very much for not signing this bill and letting us work on bringing back new legislation with 1255 and 315? 213. God, 314. That's my house where I grew up, so we're just going to call it that.
Isn't that, don't you live at 213 now?
Yeah, no, it's 218 now.
Okay.
But, I think the board's going to go with, let's make sure we have a seat at the table, present to them all the good work we've done over God only knows how many years, and that how 1255 is going to, have such a, not a positive impact on all of our efforts, and how we can hopefully share some of the stories and the history and move it forward into scrapping all of it and starting over with a new bill next year that makes sense, the combination of 1255 and the Senate bill, and move it forward. But I'm definitely supportive of moving it forward this summer with additional resources and keeping the team together.
That's a good comment from Patty. Thank you. I just wanted to say that I appreciate that, and I would support a lobbying, op-ed writing, letter to the governor writing effort with a pledge that we'll actually put serious effort into working on this.
Yeah.
We've been advised that probably isn't going to move the meter, but I think it's ground that we should be plowing anyway. So I agree with you on that. But I also want to say I do support the lobbying efforts and wherever that leads, so that we have a coalition of the willing and the like-minded who can really work on this and try to make it better. So I just wanted to add that to Patty's. So Patty's got one good suggestion off the top, which is start at the beginning. But we've been told that may be overly optimistic. But
I
let's
know,
do
but
it
you know
anyway.
me, I try to be overly
Let's do it
optimistic
anyway.
just so Peacock gets frustrated with me. Oh, here she goes again.
Any Steve or Kelly or John?
Well, I totally agree that we need to stay at the table. We know that 213 in some fashion is coming back next year. Probably be the two polarized views still, but I think we need to work on it all summer long as much as possible. At the same time, try to do damage control on 1255 and even maybe get new legislation introduced to tweak the bad parts of 1255 and make it less bad even next year, I think would be a possibility. If we really make a good case of how this could potentially affect us and destroy the good work that we have done over the years, I think they need to hear our story. And
there's others out there that have done good work that are going to be in the same situation we are. So that's building that coalition that is not just Pickens County, it's half of the state, if not more.
And I think, I mean, to me, this is more than just providing housing. Kind of the way it is, the governor's proposal was to build a huge amount of housing, and some of it would trickle down to become affordable housing.
I think that's actually a great analogy to
Yeah, and
trickle
we
down.
need to, it should be focusing on providing affordable housing at transit center locations, being energy efficient and water miserly at the same time, because those are the affordable housing, renewable energy, climate change issues, and water are the three big issues facing Colorado. All three of those should be wrapped up in this effort.
Mm-hmm. And that's a positive.
I was just going to say, before we hand it to our visitors, that it seems to me that we've made the mistakes and learned from them, the mistakes that haven't even occurred to the drafters of this legislation. And it's just such a shame, if it's being set up to fail on ways that haven't occurred to them. It gives me motivation to work on this. So haven't heard a word from any of you yet, and we'll open the floor now. But I think that's where we are.
Well, and Commissioners, thank you. John and Kara, I don't know if there's anything else that you'd like to discuss before we can provide a high-level overview of a potential path forward.
I was just going to suggest it might be good to go over the roadmap if we could ask you all to do that.
Absolutely. Well, Commissioners, thanks for having us, and I think you all said it really well, that there's an opportunity to continue moving this discussion forward. The role that the county's played in building a really strong and diverse coalition and having a seat at the table in this conversation, albeit late in the legislative session, presents an opportunity to really continue to build on that wide-ranging and broad coalition that you've built to just increase awareness and include all of the voices in these statewide conversations. And I think the lessons learned that we've had in a lot of different jurisdictions are very important to that conversation. And so during recess, while the legislature and the governor's office will likely begin to reconsider some of these conversations later this summer, and Alana knows the procedures much better than I do, so she'll walk through what a potential roadmap will look like. But at the high level, the partnership that we've built already, I think there's an opportunity to broaden it, diversify it a little bit more, make sure there are more voices at that table that can look at some of the harmful consequences of 1255, and although unintended, they're very, very real. So what we see as an opportunity with the passage of 1255, but the failure of 213, is to begin working to build that coalition a little bit more over the next couple of months. We've got more time now to do it slowly, do it thoughtfully, while continuing to engage our legislators and the governor's office for a productive dialogue that addresses some of the unintended consequences, but also delivers on the intent of building more affordable housing and does so in a more strategic way and doesn't apply a blunt instrument when a more targeted, localized strategy would be what's proven to be most effective. So, so that is the opportunity that we can walk through. And I will just say that I believe working forward, providing an option here, there are opportunities to continue to work with the governor's office. The idea of sending a letter, I think the coalition we've built, they know the position that the county and our coalition members have taken. There is an opportunity to find that Goldilocks zone and thread the needle of making it clear what our position is, but making it equally clear that we are willing partners to continue to engage in this dialogue and address some of the shortcomings in recess. So that's the potential roadmap that Alana's gonna walk through, and then we'll answer, of course, any questions that you have.
Thank you. Go, please.
And
Go
can I
ahead.
just jump in real quick?
Kelly.
Kara, can I ask, can you send the letter that Francie and I signed from to the coalition to the
Yes.
rest of the board? We
Yes.
just like thanked everyone who
that'd be
said
great.
we want to
Thanks.
continue working on this moving forward. And then I don't know how much everyone knows Alana, but she worked in the governor's office very recently and was very instrumental at getting us some very direct inroads.
Perfect. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Glad you're here.
Glad to be here. Yes, hi everyone, my name is Alana Plaza. I work with Miles, and thank you for having us. Miles set the stage perfectly, and I feel like our work here is done because so many of you voiced the really important points that we think set us up for success moving forward. But I'm happy to talk through sort of what we envision as a potential path forward for your consideration. I think in terms of painting a little bit of color on this, House Bill 1255 had been flying completely under the radar and was not being seriously considered by advocacy groups until Pitkin County came in. And Pitkin County's attention to the issue and this thoughtful coalition building, ringing the bell, bringing folks together, really changed the conversation around the bill, the testimony around the bill, and the focus through a coalition that broadly represented counties, but also resource stewards and environmental groups and conversations with housing folks. And I think because of that, the airtime or the attention that Pitkin County received for its decades of good work in this space is really night and day to what the conversation was around the bill prior to your engagement. So I want to applaud the county on that front. Of course, it didn't lead to the result that we wanted, but it was, I think, a really strong stepping stone to start this really thoughtful policy work that I think that there's a real opportunity to do and that Pitkin can lead. We know that with the failure of Senate Bill 213, we do know that the governor's office will be reconvening their agencies, their trusted partners, stakeholders across the state, experts in these areas, subject matter experts, to assess what happened and how to lay a path forward with the coming 2024 legislative session. And we want to ensure that Pitkin County has a seat at that table, but not only Pitkin County. I think that the coalition work that was done and can be broadened upon is an opportunity for us to set the stage for that work to be successful and for Pitkin to lead in the decisions that are discussed.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Yeah. I appreciate your identifying us as leaders on this, and perhaps we were. I'm just wondering, we're not out in front by ourselves, though, right? We're not the only ones, and I'm wondering if putting us in up in the leadership pole position is actually a good strategic move, because we're different up here and we're considered differently, and perhaps people have an opinion of us that would not fly well in the rest of the state, quite frankly, just because we're a very wealthy community, et cetera. They may not know about our efforts toward housing and land use and all that going back 50 years. So I just wanted to say I want to make sure we're not the only ones, and that we've got other willing leaders in this as well. Sorry, thank you.
Absolutely, and I think Miles just unmuted, so he can speak to this as well, but I think that the coalition work is because of that really important point, is so critical in making sure that we have a diverse array of counties, of organizations, of we think that there'd be great success in bringing together municipalities as well, statewide advocacy organizations, conservation organizations, housing organizations, a real gamut to build thoughtful policy. My background's in policy, and I'm of the opinion that policy is most thoughtfully created when you have that many voices at the table, but unfortunately our legislative session moves so rapidly that this work needs to happen now in preparation for the 2024 session. But yes, hear you loud and clear. Pitkin would certainly not be alone. This is a coalition building, or we see this as a coalition building effort. Miles, do you want to add anything?
Just that I think you addressed that wonderfully, and I think looking at the coalition letter that's going to be shared, Pitkin County is one among many partners, and it leads with a lot of, the county level organizations, CAS, the Colorado Association of Ski Towns, then many other counties, other municipalities, and from regions with diverse political perspectives as well. So it was already in the short amount of time, Pitkin County was a convener, but certainly not out at front by itself. And as Alana said, 1255 did come in the draft of 213 and did not get as much attention. So it was really this coalition that was catalyzed by the county, but certainly the county was not alone, that brought the concerns with this legislation to the table, and I think that sets the stage for where we go from here.
Can I ask another question, but to follow up on that, and then I'm going to hand it to Kelly. Just looking at the list of sponsors and lobbyists who are in favor of it, including very strong business development, construction industry, real estate developer type, it reminds me of the sort of development lust we saw 50 years ago, which actually might have helped frame our entire approach to land use for the last 50 years. And when I see that, it does cause a visceral response. It's like, are we going to be calling out so people understand this really isn't about affordable housing? I think it's about so much more than that, and I personally haven't seen a lot on that topic. And I'm just wondering if that would be within your scope of work to help focus attention on who's actually behind this, because there comes the conspiracy theorist in me. And I'll leave it at that. If you want to respond, please do, but then Kelly can speak.
I mean, I would say, I guess in some of the conversations that we've had with Miles and Alana, that part of where we would start would be with groups that we actually share a lot of commonality with, that were not on our side for this, and which we had approached earlier in the session around 213. Like, I had a conversation with Sweep, and you had reached out to Conservation in Colorado about like, hey, like, we share these goals, let us tell you why our goals align, but why we think you're getting it wrong, or where we think you can do it better to achieve the shared goals. And so I think that's one of the things where we've talked about really kind of starting there is, and they said, yeah, absolutely, we'd love to hear that. We'd love a presentation from you guys. We'd love to listen in on what you guys have been doing, to really try and sort of get us all on the same page, where we are aligned, because they were the ones pushing these bills in a way that we thought was going to have like detrimental effect to it. So that, I think, is part of what we would start to do in broadening the coalition, is to get more on the same page with these advocates that are going to continue to push this forward, and we want to get them pushing it down the right path.
Thank you.
Yeah, and like CC4CA, like those are kind of groups that I think it would be meaningful to share our story.
It's a great idea.
Kara?
For one context, just to give the importance of this, I just got CML's legislative update. 1255 is not in there as a legislative item that impacts municipalities from the past session. So it is still...
CML said that?
It is not listed as a legislative item that affects municipalities in their brief newsletter. So again, it highlights the importance of how this continues to fly under the radar, but yet has such, concern in the language and the broadness of it. And so I think the more that we can galvanize, the better we can be prepped for next session.
So what you just said, that being said, what's going to happen when this bill takes effect in August? Do you think they're going to change their minds when they realize the impacts? I mean, is there a rationale for them to think it's not going to impact them? I really don't know. I mean, I find that kind of hard to believe.
Thus, we've got June and July and August to start really building the coalition out and letting them know.
I see both of you nodding your heads, but I'd love to hear what any wisdom you can share with us. Oh, do you have what? Somebody else? Kelly has more too.
I could talk about this.
Go ahead.
Just to wrap up because I meant to say it and I forgot. But we also have kind of identified that some of like our partners that we're member groups of, that we want to have conversations like, hey, we understand your commitment to this issue and success on it. And like, we're members of your organization and we want to really have you understand what this bill might have done or these bills would do, and work to educate and kind of amplify our voice within the groups that we're members of as well. So like Housing Colorado, which develops affordable housing, and Colorado Coalition for the Homeless, which we're like, listen, we want to work with you on homelessness solutions, but we don't want you to throw us under the bus while you do it, and I'm not being very diplomatic, but,
well,
we're
in a
past
friendly
that point.
audience
So, but those are not other things that we want to kind of leverage more.
So my question is, I feel pretty scattered, and I'm not entirely on top of all of this. Are we relying on staff and consultants to help us frame this argument and come up with the hit list of people we need to be reaching out to? So we're throwing the ball back to you, and you'll come back to us sometime soon. Is that the plan?
And that was diplomatic, the hit list.
I think maybe just a couple of clarifications for you and then clarifications for us moving forward is, I'm hearing the board wants to continue down with this coalition building piece of it. We'll continue to refine that. It still is in the initial stages, and so we'll continue to refine that roadmap forward, can bring it back to all of you, but in the meantime also a desire for some kind of letter to the governor. And I guess just some clarification if you want that to come back to the board or if we're working with Kelly and Francie because of the timing piece of it to move that forward. I think that would be my question then
I'd
back to the
like a
board.
quick run by, but I don't want to stall it. I want to get it out there. And I think the point being is that what can we do to work together to move the right things forward? Kind of an approach. Rather than my position is just veto the damn thing and get it off your desk, which is how I would like to approach it, but I'll be more diplomatic.
I have to share Patty's frustration. So yeah, I'd love to see it, but I don't want to slow it down. I think Kelly and Francie can do it as long as they don't mince words and are forceful. Miles and Lana also.
Yeah, I'd like to
Give them hell, right? Politely.
like
I
to
will
see the
echo
letter.
Miles' earlier point about encouraging ongoing collaboration with the governor's office, given that the writing's a little bit on the wall on this one, but we absolutely can voice the concerns that Pickens County has and should voice those.
Wiser heads prevailing. I defer to your advice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
In other words, we're going to
Steve.
veto the damn thing, get it off your desk.
Well, I was just contemplating if we should consider joining CAST again, Colorado Association of Ski Towns, as an associate member.
I used to go to their meetings.
Looking at the list of people, that's kind of the towns and the counties that are our coalition on working on these land use things. And maybe we should consider, we don't have to decide right now, but they're the people we're working with the most, I think, on this. And there is sort of a natural coalition there that maybe we should leverage that a little bit.
Yeah, I know this, Tori's really active in that, and we were some years ago, and I used to actually go representing Pickens County to the meeting.
Mhm.
Their meetings were good. Their meetings were fun.
Well, maybe it's time to get back, and I would support investigating
talk
that.
about that.
Yeah, certainly.
All right.
Okay, is that it? Anything more? Miles and Lana, we did all the talking. Thanks for coming and listening to us.
Any other bills out there we don't know about that are sneaking around?
Inevitably, and that's all the more reason to really start tuning in during recess so we can start triangulating those now.
Perfect.
Right,
So,
thank you.
So one question for you, there is like rumors that there might be a special session of the legislature. Is that gonna happen, or is that just like total speculation? To revisit 213 and try to hammer it out this summer still?
I think that's the $1 million question, and Alana, I'd love to hear your thought on it. I know there was such a frenzy at the end of this session. I think everybody's still reorienting themselves, but Alana, from what I've heard, it's pure speculation at this point.
Yeah, perfectly said.
Yeah, I thought if anything it would have been for the property tax, but apparently that slid its way through at the last minute, so I don't know what's going on down there, but we got to get their heads back on straight.
If there are any, oh, go ahead, sorry.
Oh, as Kara mentioned, the governor has a 30-day clock to sign bills that were sent to his to sign or veto bills that were sent to his desk, and so that is a fast and furious 30 days of determining what action to take and setting up the signings and all of those pieces. We will certainly have more clarity in the coming weeks as they are able to breathe.
So do you think he'll come up here and sign it with us?
Yeah, right.
12:55? I highly doubt it.
Invite him over.
And give us one of those pins.
On a kind of a tangential note, I'm going to assume individual commissioners and a lot of citizens are probably weighing in on this, people who are concerned about it individually. And if you have any thoughts about that, you can share with us offline or anytime. I'd just be willing to hear it, if ideas pop into your heads regarding letters to be written or any other personal lobbying to be done. I'd be interested in hearing about that from our staff or from your group. I think that's all I wanted to say on that. Thanks. Okay, anything else? I think we're John Peacock.
Thanks,
Anything
guys.
else for
Good
us?
to see ya.
Thanks for coming. Come in person next time. We're much better looking in
forward to it.
person. Right.
I could testify to that. Thank you, Brian.
Okay, we're going to adjourn this session and appreciate your taking an interest with us.
Greg, we'll follow up on transportation to Redstone. Kelly's driving.
Okay.
Steve will
We're
check you. You're
grassroots,
probably
we're
gonna
off.
go
Thank
early.
you.
So.